Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the fanfiction guy. Back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku Turned Villain Strategist. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. The night sky loomed dark above the area, indicating that dawn was far from approaching. The smoke from the fire, the debris from the buildings, and the flickering flames merged into a terrifying scene. But for Ejiro Kirishima, there was something even more unsettling to contend with: the cries of his comrades, the desperate struggles of those fighting for their lives, and the chilling laughter of the enemy. Kirishima found himself unable to comprehend the chaos around him. How did I get here? He surveyed the scene, feeling a wave of weakness wash over him. How did this happen? His gaze fell upon the injured heroes scattered on the ground, and guilt washed over him. How could I let this happen? Looking down at his own hands, tears began to well in his eyes. I was supposed to shield them, protect them. Then how? He clenched his fists and turned away in despair. The communicators were malfunctioning, the signals jammed. He worried for Shinszo, who had been assigned to manage communication and routing. They had chosen him for that role knowing he struggled with hand-to-hand combat. Now, Kirishima could only hope for his safety. He realized he couldn't call for backup, even if anyone was left. He couldn't summon medical support or inquire about his friends. Where were they? Were they safe? Did they need his help? He felt utterly powerless. Useless. Pathetic. A failure. He had one job, one simple task, and he had failed. Then he spotted him. Midoriya? He called out in shock, seeing the green-haired boy standing not far from him. The first thought that crossed Kirishima's mind was death. Midoriya, like the others, appeared battered and bruised. Though he was barely standing, a wild smile stretched across his face as he looked at Kirishima. But there was something in his emerald eyes that sent a chill down Kirishima's spine, a haunting reminder of death. Don't tell me. Midoriya how? No. Kirishima wanted to deny it, but the truth was undeniable. Then Midoriya smiled wider. This day couldn't possibly get any worse for them. Kirishima had a terrible dream that felt all too real, as if it were a vision. A few months after Shinszo joined the hero course, things began to smooth out for most of the students at UA. Shinszo was assigned to train with Todoroki and Bakugo for extra classes related to their provisional license. The rest of the hero course had already received their licenses, but since Shinszo transferred late and the other two had initially failed the exam, they were now taking additional classes and training to catch up. The usually irritable Ash Blonde had become less angry and more rational. He had learned a thing or two from previous training exercises. While he wasn't exactly calm and friendly, he wasn't angry all the time anymore. Class 1A and Class 1B had started to bond. Though the rivalry remained, many students had become good friends. Their homeroom teachers, Eraserhead and Vlad King, were relieved that the students were no longer at each other's throats. Vlad King had even cornered Midoriya at one point, asking what he had done to Minoma, who had never been seen acting friendly toward anyone before. Now, Minoma was seen hanging out with some of Class 1A. After Midoriya managed to escape from Vlad King without answering, he was once again cornered by Present Mike, who wanted to know what Midoriya had been teaching his team, as they seemed to be on a different level compared to the others. Once again, Midoriya slipped away, claiming that All Might was calling him. And then there was Eri. Aizawa had been training her to properly use her quirk, Rewind. While progress was slow, she had at least learned to deactivate it without his help. She still struggled to control how much she could rewind or activate it without a stressful situation, and she wasn't ready to heal Mirio Togata yet. But being able to turn it off was a small victory. The cultural festival was approaching, and the students were busier than ever. UA High School felt more vibrant than it had since the beginning of the year. Everything seemed perfect, just as they had always wanted it to be. If only they knew it was merely the calm before the storm. Somewhere in the shadows, away from the lively city, a group gathered in a small building that served as their meeting place. Their conversation was so quiet that anyone nearby wouldn't have been able to hear them. Once the group concluded their discussion, Two members stood up to leave while one or two others remained behind. Outside, under the fading sunlight, two familiar figures, Tamura Shigaraki and Dabi, were seen. As they distanced themselves from their previous location, Shigaraki smirked. "Master will be so proud once my plan is complete. This time, there won't be any nuisances interfering with my game," Shigaraki declared, his smirk widening. Oh, he was going to have so much fun. The League of Villains was poised for action, each member stationed at their designated spots. A day or two earlier, Kurogiri, the Warp Gate quirk user, had been captured by the heroes. However, this was all part of a grand plan that Shigaraki was confident would succeed. For the moment, Kurogiri was being held in Tartarus prison, the same place where All for One, Stain, and many other notorious villains were incarcerated. Meanwhile, Mr. Compress, Toga, and Twice were concealed at the far end of the bridge leading to Tartarus prison, hidden inside a white van driven by Spinner. According to Shigaraki, the current leader of the League, they likely wouldn't need to engage in combat, but they were prepared for anything. Shigaraki, Dabi, and their new ally, Gigantomachia, were stationed far away on a hilltop overlooking the city and the prison. Their mission was clear: break out All for One. Back at UA High, the students were busy preparing for the upcoming cultural festival, ending their day with laughter and light conversations. Yet, Class 1A found themselves at a loss regarding what to do for the festival, struggling to come up with ideas that would be enjoyable and relaxing for everyone. As the clock struck 11 and the night fell silent, the League of Villains made their move, aided by an unexpected ally within Tartarus prison. It wasn't All for One or Kurogiri, but rather someone else entirely. Inside the vast prison, a man in a guard uniform, wearing a mouth mask, approached the control panel. Upon entering the room, he found several guards monitoring live security footage, diligently performing their duties. But that wouldn't last long. "Hey, everyone," the man said. "The boss reported a disturbance in Sector. The cameras are down there, and you need to check it out." One of the guards turned around, questioning, "Orders from?" "Orders from me," the man replied, a sinister grin spreading across his face as he pointed to his badge. He was the assistant chief, or so they believed. Realizing this, the guards quickly left the control room to investigate the issue. Alone now, the man turned to his communicator, which buzzed to life. "It's time." Shigaraki's voice echoed from the device. The man nodded and retrieved a vial containing a strange purple liquid from his pocket, tossing it into the AC vents. The vial shattered, and the liquid evaporated, filling the air with a noxious mist. The vapors spread throughout the prison, causing guards and anyone else who inhaled them to feel dizzy and nauseous, eventually losing consciousness and collapsing to the floor. This special liquid, procured from the League of Villains, was designed to evaporate and spread quickly, with effects that left the man unharmed due to his mask. On the live security footage, he watched as the guards fell unconscious one by one. "It's done. They're all down," he reported to the villains outside. "All right then. Release the ones I told you. Toga, Twice, you two get ready," Shigaraki commanded. Following orders, the man typed commands into the panel, and the cells of selected villains opened, freeing Kurogiri, All for One, Muscular, Stain, and Chisaki. Among them, Kurogiri understood the situation and what needed to happen next. The others were confused, but All for One, having used his last quirk, Search, was already aware of the unfolding events and couldn't help but smile at the prospect. Soon, a familiar warp gate opened before him, revealing his successor, Tamura Shigaraki, who was grinning widely. All for One could see the ambition in his eyes. He was planning something significant. Taking the cue, All for One stepped through the warp gate, followed closely by Kurogiri, who joined Shigaraki and Dabi. "Quite an impressive feat," All for One remarked. "Infiltrating Tartarus so quietly without any heroes involved, and freeing me so swiftly, Tamura Shigaraki. This comes as quite a surprise. I sense you have grand plans to share with me?" Shigaraki's heart raced at his master's words. "Yes. There are many things I want you to know. And this is just the beginning. I've got so much planned for us, Master," he exclaimed. "Well then, what are we waiting for? I'm all ears," the symbol of evil replied. Shigaraki was eager to reveal everything. Meanwhile, outside Tartarus prison, Spinner parked the van directly across from the building as Toga and Twice worked quickly with Mr. Compress to gather the other important villains. They even picked up a few extras, just in case they proved useful. Toga felt a thrill as she directed the others, almost like she was shopping for villains. Once their task was complete, the 3 villains climbed back into the van, and Spinner drove them to the rendezvous point to meet with the others. Wow, that was some work. Thank goodness we got out safe, super high security. My foot. The cultural festival is happening soon, and excitement fills the air as students prepare for the various events. Colorful decorations adorn the hallways, and the aroma of delicious food wafts through the school. Friends gather to discuss their plans, laughter echoing as they share their hopes for the festival. As the day approaches, the atmosphere becomes electric. Students work tirelessly on their booths, showcasing their talents and creativity. Performances are scheduled, and everyone is eager to see the talent show, where the best acts will take the stage. On the day of the festival, the school is alive with energy. Families and friends come to support the students, and the sense of community is palpable. The sound of music fills the air, and the vibrant colors of the decorations create a festive backdrop. As the sun sets, the festival reaches its peak. The talent show begins, and the audience cheers for each performance. The energy is infectious, and everyone feels a sense of pride in their school and each other. Amidst the joy, friendships deepen, and new connections are formed. The cultural festival becomes a cherished memory for all, a celebration of creativity, teamwork, and the bonds that unite them. The very next day, just as the sun rose, everyone in Tartarus began to wake up slowly. By 7 in the morning, they fully realized that the strongest and most dangerous villains were missing from their cells. They had escaped, or rather, they had been released by someone. Security footage indicated that their assistant chief was behind this and was now missing from the prison. Without wasting any time, they informed every pro-hero agency and police force throughout the country about the quiet escape of the villains. Something terrible was about to unfold. The news of All for One's escape from Tartarus spread rapidly, leaving civilians terrified and questioning who would protect them now. In their minds, only All Might could possibly defeat someone like All for One, but with his retirement, they wondered who could stand against such a threat. The heroes themselves were uncertain about their ability to confront someone like him. The police were disheartened to learn that the traitor was one of their respected assistant chiefs. Trust was now a fragile concept. Chaos erupted. The peace that once reigned was shattered, beginning with the fear that gripped the minds of the people. If they were not mentally prepared, what would happen when a physical confrontation arose? It was not faring any better. The principal found himself torn between the cultural festival for the students and the safety of the Hero Corps students, particularly Class 1. Ultimately, he decided to proceed with the festival under heightened security from several pro-heroes while increasing the physical and mental training sessions for the Hero Corps to prepare them for the worst. Meanwhile, the villains were also gearing up. Shigaraki was confident that this time they would eliminate any obstacles in their path beforehand. He had finished explaining his elaborate plan, and his master was pleased to see how much he had grown since their last meeting. Shigaraki had a purpose for the escape of the other villains. Kurogiri was a necessary asset, so he had to be with them. Muscular was there to bolster their brute strength if needed. Although Shigaraki was reluctant about having Stain and Chisaki join them, he had reasons for both. He initially planned to leave Stain free, knowing he could eliminate many heroes, which would simplify their challenges. He didn't care about the spotlight now. Soon it would all be about him and his master. As for Chisaki, Shigaraki had little regard for him but recognized his strong quirk, which he couldn't use at the moment. So, he decided to take advantage of the situation and asked All for One to absorb Chisaki's quirk, knowing it would be a valuable addition to their collection. The next day, Chisaki was found quirkless right in front of the main police station in Mizudafu City. Now! Shigaraki clapped his hands together, keeping his pinky fingers away. On to the next step. Ooh, what are we going to do now? Do I get to cut someone? Toga asked eagerly as she sat beside Twice. The entire league, including All for One, was at a different base discussing their next move. Well, to be honest, Shigaraki said, barely acknowledging Toga, this one is entirely your work, master. But I'm sure it will bring you more satisfaction than the last or the upcoming ones. All for One nodded, smiling as Shigaraki respectfully handed him a file. To his delight, Shigaraki was right. This plan was sure to bring him immense satisfaction. He was also proud of his successor for uncovering the secret of One for All without his guidance. In the evening at the dorms of Class 1A, the students were hanging out in the common area, most of them just back from training or finishing their homework. The television was on, and news reporters were detailing the events following the Tartarus breakout incident. Despite having heard the news repeatedly from their teachers, the group of teenagers remained attentive. The escape of All for One was the last thing they wanted to happen. Midoriya had a sinking feeling that he was a target, being All Might's successor and the current holder of One for All. While he wouldn't say it out loud, those who knew understood he was indeed a target. This is horrible. Kirishima slumped on the couch, clearly exhausted from intense training. Yeah, and to think Chisaki was involved, and now Stain is free too, Azui added. Ida flinched slightly at the mention of Stain. I suggest hiding in an underground bunker for the next 4 months. We could have all the female heroes guarding us too. Mineta exclaimed, half in tears. Is he always like this? Shinszo asked. Unfortunately, yes, Jiru replied. I just hope it all ends well and no one gets hurt, Uraraka said, her expression filled with concern. The room fell silent for a moment before Yaoyorozu and Ojiro entered from the kitchen to announce that dinner was ready. Coming, the teens replied, turning off the television just as it switched to an interview with the police and left the common area. Bakugo, however, noticed Midoriya sitting on the far corner of the couch, lost in thought. You want to starve or what, nerd? Bakugo called out, causing the green-haired boy to snap out of his thoughts and quickly stand up. Why, sorry, he muttered before joining his classmates. At around 1 in the morning, when everyone was sound asleep in their respective dorm rooms, Midoriya woke up. The green-haired boy looked around, taking deep breaths. He had just witnessed something he wished would never come true. But it was there, the feeling that something was approaching. It was coming. And this is where it all begins. The next few days seemed to fly by as the students of UA High busied themselves with preparations for the festival after receiving approval from their principal, Nizu. At dawn, Midoriya sat with All Might in the teacher's lounge, both discussing the current situation. I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to talk to you, everyone's been so busy lately, Midoriya said, scratching the back of his head as he apologized to his mentor. It's not your fault, my boy. Life has its ways. All Might replied, waving it off. For a few moments, silence hung between the predecessor and the successor as they struggled to find the right words to begin discussing All for One. What could All Might say? That the boy wasn't prepared enough? That he feared losing him like he lost his master? That he didn't want young Midoriya to be involved? He knew his boy would inevitably become the villain's ultimate target. They would come for him. Who wouldn't want to eliminate any potential threats? He didn't want that, not at all. But what could he do? How could he protect his successor? What should Midoriya say? That he wasn't ready with One for All but would fight All for One if necessary? That he would push himself to the limit to keep everyone safe? That he would sacrifice himself to stop the symbol of evil? Yes, All Might already knew that much. Everyone did. They clearly didn't want him to step into this matter at all. And what about All Might himself? Sir Night Eye had predicted he would die this year or the next. Now that All for One was back, Midoriya didn't want anything to happen to All Might. But he wasn't ready yet. It wasn't his time. He knew it. Still, he would do his best regardless. All Might, Midoriya was the first to break the silence, his mentor looking at him as he continued, I know you're worried about me. I know I'm not ready yet. I know he will target me and I want you to know that. Even if anything happens, I won't fail you. At this, the green-haired boy stood up. Young Midoriya. I know what you're thinking, All Might. But please, don't worry about me. You don't have to. I will train harder than anyone else. I will increase my training time and enhance myself. I will do my best to use one for all properly and avoid injuries. I promise, I will train harder to control this quirk. I promise you. I won't give up. I won't fail you. I don't want to. I will stop him with everything I have. Young man, All Might could see the small tears forming in the corners of Midoriya's emerald eyes. Was he scared? All Might stood up and walked over to Midoriya. The boy didn't notice him until the blonde ruffled his hair. Midoriya looked up, and All Might smiled. I know you won't fail me. You never have and you never will. All Might grinned as he patted the boy's head. All Might. Just be safe, okay? I just don't want anything bad to happen to you, my boy. Midoriya quickly wiped away the tears from his eyes and gave a big smile to his mentor as he clenched his fists. I promise, he beamed. At this, All Might smiled too. He had the best successor. Wait a second. Midoriya exclaimed. Then I should start training right now. If I want to increase one for all from 20% onwards without hurting myself, I should work with my legs first. Shouldn't I get used to using 20% all the time? Then maybe I can increase it like before. I should also create more powerful moves with my legs. Should I talk to Ida about this? He must know something I don't. Maybe I can follow some of Pro Hero Mirko's moves. I have to improve my flexibility and reflexes too. I know. I will ask Monoma. He can help me in all areas easily. And then we can create calm. Young Midoriya, you're doing it again, All Might interrupted him with a sigh. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I started muttering. My apologies, Midoriya said, scratching the back of his head. It's fine. Just go get some rest now. But you can train tomorrow. But I'm calling Aizawa. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night. Good night. Midoriya walked down the halls of UA High toward his dormitory when he suddenly slowed his pace. I still couldn't talk to him about the nightmares, he thought. Yes, his nightmares. They weren't specifically nightmares, as he wasn't sure if he was even sleeping during them. He had just started calling them that but never spoke to anyone about them. They began a few days after All for One's escape, and to be honest, he could feel the symbol of evil already playing with his mind. But he didn't want anyone to worry about him. He didn't want them to be concerned or do anything for him at all. He was fine. He would be fine. He was fighting the invisible battle already set for him against the villain he was destined to face. But still, he couldn't find the cause. Why did All for One choose this path? Playing with his mind, showing him terrifying scenarios of endless deaths, whispering that he didn't belong with the heroes, that he wasn't supposed to be at UA, that this wasn't his true place, trying to win him over. Every now and then, the most common thing he heard during those moments was, "Join us." Midoriya didn't fully understand all of it, but he knew where it was leading. Should I even tell All Might about this? Midoriya thought. He is already worried about me. Maybe I shouldn't. But then what should I do about it? Midoriya, a familiar voice interrupted him. The green-haired boy hadn't even realized when Ida entered the dorms. Oh, yes, Ida? Midoriya asked, looking at the taller boy. I said dinner is ready, but you seem lost in thought. Ida said, gesturing animatedly with his hands. Yes. Sorry. Midoriya replied, looking down before a hand appeared in front of his face at just the right angle. Is something bothering you? Ida asked. It's nothing. Midoriya smiled and began waving his hands back and forth. Don't worry about it. I was just thinking about training. That's all, he exclaimed, trying to sound convincing. I see. Just as expected of you, Midoriya. Ida's concern faded away. I still expect you at the table with everyone. All right. Now, he needed to figure out All for One's plan while keeping everyone in the dark about it. The man stood tall, a smirk on his face that made Izuku Midoriya's stomach turn. He raised his hands, stained with the remnants of those dear to the green-haired boy. Izuku knelt on the ground, feeling defeated, his arms limp at his sides. His eyes widened in shock, taking in the chaos around him. He wanted to scream, to let out the pain that was threatening to consume him. Blood was everywhere, and it was infuriating. He felt powerless, watching as All for One systematically tore apart everything he held dear: his mother, All Might, his friends, his teachers, Eri, and so many more. Come on, Izuku, he urged himself, shutting his eyes tightly. You can do this. Just take it all in. He repeated the words All for One had said to him, trying to steel himself. Endure it. It's not real. They're all still alive. He focused on his memories, recalling every taunt and threat from All for One. Just as he was about to gather his thoughts, a piercing scream echoed through the air, followed by a splash of blood as another body fell before him. Todoroki was gone. He didn't flinch. He was becoming accustomed to this torment. It's been a whole month since he started his mind games, he thought. All for One had been relentless, showing him different scenarios while he slept, trying to break him. And Izuku had kept it all to himself. We don't have to go through this if you just comply and join me, All for One had said casually, as if the lives he was destroying meant nothing. A monster. Izuku remained silent, observing the nightmare around him. This wasn't reality, it was a dream controlled by All for One. And this was all part of his plan to win in the real world. Just wait and watch. He smiled. The following days flew by as Izuku began to piece together the situation. He wrote down everything he remembered from All for One's manipulations, slowly connecting the dots between One for All's full potential, the Tartarus prison break, and the deaths of his comrades. Okay, let's go over everything again, he said to himself, his notebook open in front of him. It was late, but he had work to do. There was no time for sleep. He turned back to his notes. I have One for All, a quirk passed down through generations. Its power increases with each user. If All for One is talking about its full potential and considering that I'm the 9th user, the Tartarus break was due to a traitor in the faculty. Helping villains. Quirks. He suddenly stopped, a realization hitting him. He mentioned quirks, not just quirk. His eyes widened as he scanned his notes. He also mentioned high-end Nomus. Nomus with multiple quirks. And sensitivity. Quirks. One for all. Nom. Traitor in the faculty. I got it, he exclaimed, a smile spreading across his freckled face, but it quickly faded into a frown. Damn it. He can't be serious. Izuku groaned, resting his head on the notebook. He understood what was coming, and he didn't like it one bit. Would he tell anyone? Would he ask for help? Absolutely not. Did he have a counterattack planned? That was something he would keep to himself. After all for One had a search quirk. Izuku was well aware of that. He had a strategy in mind. If All for One tried to manipulate him, he would do the same in return. He silently vowed to throw back everything All for One did from that point onward. So, the green-haired boy decided to use his enemy's power against him. The next morning, Izuku made his way to UA's support lab, where he found Mei Hatsum. He was grateful she was there because he wanted to discuss something important. He spent the next few hours in the support lab with Hatsum, and since they were alone, no one knew what transpired. It was better that way. Afterward, he visited the Class 1B dorms, spending another hour with his former teammates. No one questioned their camaraderie. It was normal now, and it was better that way. Returning to his own dorm, Izuku spread a silent order across UA. He didn't explain his plan or how he knew what was going to happen. He simply issued commands as if they were given to him. 3 code words would mark everything he intended to do, signaling his victory from the very beginning. 3 simple words that everyone seemed to understand, but not their true purpose. He was going to embrace the situation and counter it while watching the despair on both sides from the shadows as he dismantled the enemy completely. He mentally chastised himself. Maybe the role of villain leader was rubbing off on him too much. Closing the door to his dorm room, he leaned against it and smirked. Screw the rules. That same day, the villains had their own plans in motion, quick and efficient, a sudden but significant attack on UA High. What? Izuku Midoriya. Take him and get back to the new base. Dabi, Toga, Twice, and Shigaraki would provide the distraction for the pro heroes while Mr. Compress and Kurogiri would get the job done. 11 a.m. Right on time. Not a minute too late. Not a minute too early. Why attack in broad daylight? Well, they have All for One, the symbol of evil himself on their side. Why hold back? If they could have it now, why not? It's not like UA can take on the symbol of evil. Even All Might's retired. So why not? Then, with a sudden and quick blast of blue fire coming from a warp gate Kurogiri created near the training grounds, the villains began to enter from different locations around the campus thanks to Kurogiri again and began their respective jobs. Dabi on the training grounds, Shigaraki near the teachers' dormitories, Toga near the students' dormitories, and twice near the main building as the hunt for Midoriya began. The pro-heroes, upon first sight, engaged in battle with the villains and informed the students to stay hidden and safe. Hero Corps students were allowed to fight back only in case of emergencies. Just as planned, it didn't take long before Dabi spotted Midoriya in the training grounds. He quickly turned on his communicator and informed the rest of the league about Midoriya's location. But of course, the kid wasn't the only one in the training grounds. There were a few of his classmates too, considering it was a weekend. Should we attack? Mr. Aizawa said in case of emergencies, but I don't think this guy's here to have a fight at all. Kirishima exclaimed, hardening his fists. He and his classmates were currently huddled behind the wall's cementos created for training purposes. I did expect them to be here. But this soon? Someone's impatient. Midoriya thought as he peeked out from the corner, noticing that Dabi was on his communicator, probably informing the other villains. Okay, calm down. You can do it. Midoriya thought to himself as he maintained a stern look before turning to his classmates. I don't think we should attack just yet. He hasn't made a dangerous move yet, Midoriya replied to Kirishima's earlier question. He's right. We should follow the given instructions, Ida said, sitting beside Midoriya on the floor. Kirishima and the others nodded to his statement before Dabi stepped in and made them regret whatever they were thinking. He came from a portal behind the students and unleashed a huge amount of blue flames to separate the students from each other. The teenagers scattered out into the open away from their hiding spot. Compress, your turn, Dabi said through his communicator. As soon as he did, another warp gate opened. But this time, behind Midoriya. A gloved hand emerged and quickly reached for the green-haired boy. Midoriya! Ida and Kirishima yelled at the same time, running toward him. But Midoriya didn't make a move. One touch, and Midoriya was trapped in one of Mr. Compress's little blue orbs. And with the orb, the hand retreated. Soon, a warp gate opened underneath every villain on campus, marking their retreat. Everyone was left in shock. The league took Midoriya. The students present stood in utter disbelief, completely silent. There wasn't a sound except for their breathing. Nobody moved from their places as the image of Bakugo being kidnapped by the League of Villains flashed in their minds. And now Midoriya was gone. But unlike Bakugo's kidnapping, Midoriya's was just too swift. They doubted anyone had actually been hurt during the brief time the villains were on campus. But then again, they didn't hurt anyone. Doesn't that mean they were planning something much bigger and more dangerous? Just the thought of it sent chills down their spines. What exactly were they planning to do? More specifically, what were they planning to do with Midoriya? A lot of questions raced through their minds but were soon interrupted by Present Mic's voice coming through the compact speakers installed throughout UA High as he announced, all uninjured students currently on campus are to gather in front of the school building immediately. If there are any injuries, please report to Recovery Girl's office first and then meet up with your homeroom teacher so we can confirm the total number of students on campus are safe or not. I repeat, kindly gather in front of the school building. His voice lacked its usual funky tone, instead reflecting his genuine concern for the students. The students collected themselves and made their way to the designated location without saying a word. The guilty aura that surrounded the small group Ida, Kirishima, Ojiro, Shoji, and Kaminari spoke volumes. It's all my fault. I should have been faster. How dare they even? Please be safe. I couldn't even move. But if Midoriya were there, he would have thought that step one of his plan was going just fine. What? Are you guys okay? You didn't get hurt, did you? Ashido exclaimed as she latched onto both Uraraka's and Azui's arms. Don't worry, Mina. We're fine. Uraraka replied. Ribbit, are you good? Azui asked. I was just scared for you guys. Ashido replied, pulling them into a group hug. All the classes were gathered in a disorganized manner. In front of the school building, chatting about the recent incident. Reportedly, there wasn't a single student who got hurt in the slightest. Just one or two teachers had a few scratches here and there from their encounter with the villains. But then again, the villains didn't seem to care about the fight. They weren't there for that. They were searching for something or someone. And they got what they came for. Attention, all students, Nizu said through a microphone as he stood on a podium to get the attention of all the students present. The teachers were lined up on both sides, a noticeable gap between them. I know you all are confused and shocked about the previous events, but to avoid further commotion, I ask you to kindly line up with your homeroom teachers so we can ensure everyone is accounted for. 20 students rushed to Vlad King. 20 gathered around Cementos. A familiar number surrounded Power Loader. The same was true for all the others. Except for Shota Aizawa. 17, 18, 19, 20. Aizawa counted the group of teenagers around him. 20? There should be 21, right? Is someone in the infirmary that I wasn't informed about? He asked. No, sir. Ida replied weakly. Aizawa didn't ask for further explanation immediately. Instead, he checked the class attendance sheet to confirm the missing student. Midoriya. Where's Midoriya? Aizawa asked, a hint of worry creeping into his voice. Of course, it was the problem child who was missing. Haven't seen him all day. Shiro pondered. Oh, wasn't he training? Yaoyorozu pointed out, glancing at those who had trained with him. But everyone fell silent as they looked at the small group. Gathering enough courage, Ida finally said, Mr. Aizawa. Midoriya. He was taken by the villains. The class gasped, horrified. What do you mean he was taken by the villains? What happened? Aizawa asked, subconsciously stepping forward. They just came in and there was that warp guy, and they took him. We couldn't even help him. Kirishima added, providing a brief explanation. Did they state their purpose? Aizawa asked, trying to maintain his composure. Midoriya, his student, was likely with the symbol of evil himself, and he had every right to be concerned for his safety. But he also needed to ensure that these students didn't rush their feelings out of guilt like last time. And no, Kaminari said. They didn't say anything. Head back to your dorms. I'll handle the rest. Midoriya slowly opened his eyes, trying to grasp his current situation. The room was dimly lit, as if the owner didn't want him to see much of his surroundings. He realized he was strapped to a metallic chair. He gave it a few JRKS to test its strength, but it didn't budge. There wasn't much he could assess since he couldn't move, but everything changed when the person standing before him approached face to face. You're awake already? Not a very sound sleeper, are you? Midoriya struggled to ignore the intense and ominous aura of the man known as All for One as he spoke those words. It's about time we met face to face. I can tell you weren't very fond of our discussions. So, I thought we could skip to the point. Midoriya bit his lower lip, avoiding eye contact with the villain. He didn't respond, just as he hadn't during their previous encounters. HM. So, do you have an answer? Because you certainly don't have a choice, kid. All for One stepped closer. Join us willingly, or I will have to make you. His voice was so menacing that anyone else might have frozen in fear at the thought of what could happen next. But not Midoriya. For the first time in a month, Midoriya spoke back to him. I'm in, he replied, his head hanging low, his bangs covering his eyes as he awaited a response from the symbol of evil. All for One laughed. You're smart to agree. I like that. This is just what I was looking for. At this statement, Midoriya looked up slightly, catching a glimpse of the wide smirk on All for One's face. Someone intelligent who can wield power without losing their senses. All for One said in a hushed tone, leaning in closer to gauge Midoriya's expression. A chill ran down Midoriya's spine as the villain hovered just inches away from him. You will make a great asset to our organization after a few modifications. All for One stepped back, his hand quickly moving to Midoriya's forehead as he activated his quirk for the modifications. Midoriya blacked out. When he opened his eyes again, he realized he had passed out for several hours. It might already be the next day, but he couldn't tell since there were no windows in the area where he was being held captive. Wait, wasn't he in a small, dimly lit room? This place was much larger. Though the lights were off, a huge glass panel allowed light to filter into the area, likely separating it from another room. An observation panel. A wide area. Midoriya's hands weren't tied anymore. He was free to move. Suddenly, everything clicked in his mind. All for One said to help the villains with quirks, not just one quirk. So, that means my theory was right. All I need to see now is if the quirk he gave me is the one I thought it would be or something else. Midoriya thought to himself. As if on cue, the lights in the wide area turned on. The blinding white lights stung Midoriya's emerald green eyes for a moment before he adjusted. Then a voice came through the speakers installed in the walls. Midoriya turned to the glass screen and saw All for One standing with Kurogiri. "Glad to see you're on your feet," All for One said. "Just as I thought. If someone can withstand the current power of One for All, they can certainly handle another quirk perfectly." "Another quirk?" Midoriya asked, trying to appear as dumbfounded as possible. He couldn't let All for One know anything. "Why yes, if you haven't noticed yet," All for One replied. "You agreed to help the League, didn't you? Trust me, you are a wonderfully skilled asset we can use in any field we desire. But for now, our biggest challenge is acquiring powerful and unique quirks for creating Nomus." Midoriya clenched his fists, not out of anger but from a growing excitement in his mind. He could see where this was leading. This was it. This was the moment he had prepared for. This was exactly how Midoriya envisioned it would unfold. "Due to my recent activities, I've been quite busy handling various matters. So, my dear successor and I have chosen you for this task. You will provide us with quirks for Nomus." For One grinned slyly. "I have given you a quirk that allows you to duplicate any quirk that has been used on you, but only one at a time." That certainly sounded familiar. Isn't that essentially the same as copy? Midoriya asked, eager for more information. "No, not at all. If that were the case, we would have taken that Monoma boy instead. We wouldn't even need to give him a new quirk," All for One replied. "Then what's the difference?" Midoriya inquired, his curiosity piqued. "This quirk creates a new quirk rather than a temporary copy that fades away after a time limit. The quirk you duplicate will remain permanently within you, unless I force it out, which is the primary reason for giving it to you. The copy quirk creates an illusion, has a time limit, and doesn't work for all quirks. However, the duplicate quirk grants you unlimited access to any quirk ever used on you. No time limit. No storage issues. Just one at a time," All for One explained succinctly. "I see." Midoriya nodded, absorbing all the information. Meanwhile, in the observation room, Kurogiri turned to All for One. "Sir, do you really think this is a wise decision? What if he decides to betray us?" "Don't worry, Kurogiri," All for One reassured him. "I've already used my quirk on him to gauge his true motives. He has pure intentions of embracing villainy. Strange, isn't it? All Might's successor willingly wants to join the dark side. One of those pathetic One for All users finally understands the purpose of that quirk. He may have acted heroically all along, but you never know the true darkness of one's soul. Perhaps this is his true nature. This is what he desires. His true destiny. To be a villain." "I understand, sir," Kurogiri nodded. "If you trust the boy, I will too." Regardless, All for One smiled. "I can't wait to see All Might's reaction when he learns about this." Back with Midoriya, the boy stood with his back to the glass screen, attempting to analyze his new quirk by utilizing some quirks that had been used on him before. He began with a small explosion, just enough to avoid causing any damage or attracting attention from the two villains behind the glass. At first, it seemed ineffective, but with enough focus and determination, Midoriya's palm began to spark. One spark, two sparks, and then a small explosion erupted. The green-haired boy smiled at his success. He wanted to try another quirk, but All for One interrupted him, eager for him to test his new ability without concern for the surroundings. Midoriya rolled his eyes but complied. He turned to face All for One, giving a deliberate nod. He stretched his right arm, supporting it with his left, and aimed at the opposite wall. Within moments, he shot out ice similar to Todoroki's. Then, using his left hand, he released a burst of fire that melted the ice instantly. Just as I thought. I can use Kaken's and Todoroki's quirks just fine. The more detailed knowledge I have of these quirks, the better I can utilize them, Midoriya mused. He rolled up his sleeves, a wide smirk spreading across his face as he aimed his left arm at the ceiling, his right arm positioned behind it. The structure of a metal ball. A heavy ball of metal formed from his left arm, which he threw upwards. A moment later, he used his right arm to eject acid, destroying the ball. Creation and acid are covered. Midoriya felt immense gratitude for having trained with his entire team during those preparation days. He was pulled from his thoughts by the sound of slow clapping from All for One. It's fascinating to see how quickly you've adapted to this situation and how effectively you can use that power. It feels as if you almost anticipated this moment. Almost as if turning to the dark side was your plan all along. Interesting, isn't it? Well, what can I say? Midoriya smirked. Except that I've been planning. He had already covered half or more of his own class's quirks, including those from Class 1B, the Sludge Villains, Gran Torinos, Togas, Shindos, Mirios, Sir Nighteyes, Aries, and Mr. Aizawa's quirks. The list continued, just as he had planned. Soon he would reveal his true nature. The 1A Heights Alliance dormitories were locked, just like all the others. No student was allowed to leave their respective dorm buildings until further notice. It was deemed too risky by the principal himself. Due to the recent kidnapping incident, all students considering how much trouble they attracted were not permitted to step outside. Their homeroom teachers were to keep them informed about the school's decisions. However, all teachers were currently in the meeting room, discussing Midoriya's situation. In the 1A dorms, Shinszo made his way to Midoriya's room. He placed his hand on the doorknob and turned it. The door was unlocked, just as he had been informed. Entering, he closed the door behind him and approached Midoriya's desk, where the boy's notebook lay open. Hero analysis for future number 14. Convenient, wasn't it? A whole new journal dedicated to one plan. Single. It's time, Shinszo said as he picked up the notebook. Not that Shinszo knew what Midoriya was truly planning. Perhaps, Midoriya's true nature wasn't what it seemed. Chapter end. The UA teachers were gathered in the meeting hall, discussing the current situation. What should they do? The League had taken Midoriya, and the situation was dire. With All for One back in action and All Might retired, a rescue mission seemed almost impossible. Attempting to retrieve Midoriya could lead to disastrous consequences. They lacked a fighter capable of confronting the symbol of evil, and if he retaliated, it could mean their end. To make matters worse, they had no idea where the League was hiding. The heroes needed a plan, a safe strategy. They had to think this through carefully. Midoriya's life could be in danger, and they needed to act quickly. Time was of the essence. But what could they do? The teachers were in a difficult position. Present Mike and Midnight were questioning everything, while Aizawa's frustration kept Vlad King from making foolish comments about Class 1B's lack of kidnapping cases. All Might sat in silence, his gaze downcast, burdened by a heavy sense of responsibility. All Might felt terrible. A melancholic aura surrounded him, and guilt gnawed at his insides. His successor had been abducted, and now he was within All for One's reach. All Might's predecessor had sacrificed her life for his safety, and what had he done for Midoriya? Nothing. Throughout the meeting he could only blame himself for Midoriya's easy capture. Yes, the boy had been taken so easily. But Midoriya was not the type to let any villain capture him without a fight. He was a determined fighter. So why had it happened so effortlessly? Could it be that Midoriya was planning something? The rest of Midoriya's day passed as he focused on mastering more quirks. Time flew by when he was practicing. He hadn't even noticed that both All for One and Kurogiri had left him alone. Eventually, Kurogiri returned to observe him as he gained better control over his newfound abilities. Unfortunately, he couldn't practice Toga's quirk without someone else's blood. The other quirks seemed to work perfectly, just as All for One had promised. Midoriya was able to use them almost flawlessly. It seemed that being a nerd had its advantages, especially in this situation. Midoriya's only regret was how worried everyone back at UA must be, particularly those he hadn't informed, like All Might. But perhaps their concern added an element of authenticity to his plan. He could always apologize later. Or maybe not at all. His thoughts were interrupted when Kurogiri reminded him that it was getting late and suggested he eat something and get some rest. Oh wow, someone cares. Midoriya thought. Kurogiri led him outside, and they walked up a flight of stairs in silence. Midoriya realized they had been underground. Upon reaching the first floor, they encountered Twice, who stopped and waved enthusiastically. Kurogiri. And Midoriya, right? Twice exclaimed, approaching them. Kurogiri nodded, and Midoriya turned to face Twice. So, he's the one joining us, right? Man, he's so much easier to deal with than that chaotic rebellious child. Why can't the others just agree like him? Though it was quite bold of you to betray the heroes, kid. I'm already proud of you, Twice said, playfully poking Midoriya's forehead. Thanks, I guess? Midoriya replied with an awkward smile. You guys heading somewhere? Twice asked Kurogiri. No. I was just taking him to his room so he could rest, Kurogiri replied. Leave that to me. Twice said, giving Kurogiri a thumbs up as he threw an arm around Midoriya. I'll take care of him like my little brother. But wait, I killed my little brother. Just kidding. I never had a little brother to begin with. Twice exclaimed cheerfully. Unless. He paused, placing a hand on his chin as a black shadow enveloped him, while Midoriya and Kurogiri exchanged amused glances. Are you sure you can handle this? Kurogiri asked, clearly skeptical. Absolutely. Twice responded, giving another thumbs up. Fine then. A few minutes later. I don't know how to take care of children. Twice cried out in distress. I'm fine. I just. No. Don't say it. I'm taking care of you, okay? Don't say anything. I know what to do. I'm an adult, and I must take responsibility. Then how about we? I'm a horrible babysitter. What the? Toga! Help me. And so, Midoriya spent the rest of the night with Twice and Toga. It didn't take long for the other league members to accept him as one of their own. Twice had become a friend, while Toga's obsession made him keep his distance. Spinner was easy to connect with. Judging by his clothing and fighting style, Midoriya recognized him as a fan of Stain. Since Spinner knew Stain had spared Midoriya's life, he quickly warmed up to him. Mr. Compress tried to challenge him, but Midoriya impressed the magician with his knowledge and control over quirks. Mr. Compress was taken aback by how well-informed the boy was. As a good magician, he always preferred to stay updated, and this kid had it all. Midoriya hadn't seen Dabi around the base, so he figured he would have to wait for another day to meet him. He was confident that Kurogiri trusted him enough to let him roam freely. Now, the green-haired boy decided that his next target would be Tamura Shigaraki. Hitoshi Shinszo had begun following the first instruction from the journal Midoriya had left behind for them. Apparently, Midoriya had visited a bookstore 3 days before his kidnapping and placed a few orders that Shinszo was supposed to handle. Following the instructions, Shinszo dialed the number written in the journal, which he assumed belonged to the bookstore's DLVRY service. When someone picked up the call from the other end, he provided 3 different addresses that were also noted in the journal for 3 separate deliveries. After the call, Shinszo examined the journal again to determine which book was going where and to whom. To his surprise, he recognized 2 of the 3 addresses very well. However, he couldn't figure out where the 3rd book was headed. An out-of-context title, different from the others, going to a place Shinszo had never heard of. The books were The Art of War to the Pro-Hero Endeavor, Spies of Nippon to Momo Yaoyorozu, and finally, True Believers to an Unknown Person. At least he could ask Yaoyorozu what was going on. Enji Todoroki, better known as Endeavor, was in his office, sitting at his desk, staring at a book that had just arrived. The sender was unknown. He couldn't deny that the signature on the last page of the book was unmistakably that of the head of the Public Safety Commission unless someone was exceptionally skilled at forging signatures. The book was old. He remembered hearing something about it but had never found the time to read a copy. Perhaps now was the time. Endeavor opened the book and turned to the first page, only to find that everything except a few words had been blacked out with ink. "Are you still up, Shigaraki?" The man in question stood on the roof of the base, gazing at the night sky in the cool breeze when that seemingly innocent voice reached his ears. Tamura Shigaraki turned around to see Midoriya standing right behind him, a warm smile on the younger boy's face as he stood with his eyes closed. A calming and friendly aura surrounded Midoriya, who had his hands clasped behind his back. Shigaraki stared at him for a moment before replying, "Yeah, so?" "Nothing. Just asking." Midoriya's tone held no hint of anything but friendly concern. Not finding anything particularly interesting, Shigaraki turned away and took a deep breath, trying to enjoy the quiet time he had before he acted further on his plan. It felt strange, though, with Midoriya standing right there, just behind him, exuding such calmness that it was as if he wasn't even there. A few minutes passed in silence, and Shigaraki attempted to ignore Midoriya's presence, which he had been doing well at until Midoriya asked his next question. "So, about your plan?" Midoriya began. "My plan?" Midoriya nodded, humming, "What am I supposed to do next?" His smile remained. "You are just here to provide us with quirks." "You should have known that by now," Shigaraki replied quickly, a hint of annoyance creeping into his voice. Midoriya chuckled lightly. "I can tell you haven't considered the other benefits of having me on your side, have you?" "Other benefits? What do you mean?" "Listen, Shigaraki." Midoriya's tone suddenly shifted, his face adopting a serious expression that was a stark contrast to his previous demeanor. It surprised Shigaraki how quickly the boy changed. "You keep this up and your plan will fail." Midoriya spoke directly, his eyes devoid of emotion. "Do you really think your plan is going smoothly? Think again. If this continues, the heroes will discover me soon. It won't take long for them to track you all down. And when that happens, they will capture me and probably Kurogiri as well. You won't be enough to defeat them or even put up a fight. And then you... Are you forgetting that Master is with us now? They don't have All Might. They lack their strongest piece, but we have our king. If they come here, we'll take them down. It's a perfect checkmate," Shigaraki exclaimed. However, the smug expression quickly faded when he saw Midoriya shaking his head in disapproval and disappointment. "That is where you are wrong, my friend." Midoriya took a deep breath and stepped closer to Shigaraki, placing his scarred right hand on Shigaraki's shoulder as he spoke. "They know your master's weakness." Shigaraki's eyes widened. Endeavor took a blank page and grabbed a pen. He turned to the cryptic book and began writing down all the bits and pieces together to uncover the message sent to him. 3 days later, rescue starts for UA students. Location trace numbers written on page the third of the 4 will lead you there, Endeavor murmured to himself, almost in a whisper. "The third of the 4? He questioned, turning to page 53 as indicated in the note. The page had everything blacked out, with 5 different numbers written at the top and bottom. Third of the 4. But there are 5 numbers. What does that mean? Endeavor pondered. This was going to be a long night. Momo Yaoyorozu was in her dorm room when she received a package from a bookshop. Power Loader had handed it to her after retrieving it from the Dielvoi man at the gates of UA High. Opening the package, she found a book, as expected. She sat at her desk, examining it, but there was no note indicating who sent it. Sighing, the black-haired girl turned to the first page. Similar to Endeavor's, this book also had most of its content blacked out with ink. The few visible words seemed to form a cryptic message that could raise suspicions if sent to her. Grabbing a spare notebook and a pencil, Yaoyorozu jotted down the visible words. 5 days to go before I come back. All info will be prepared. Move according to instructions written ahead. Don't tell anyone, she thought, resting her thumb and index finger on her chin. A few minutes passed as the message swirled in Yaoyorozu's mind before she heard a knock on her door. Setting the book aside, she allowed the person outside to enter. As soon as she did, Shinszo quickly opened the door and closed it behind him. Shinszo? You good? Do you need anything? Yayarosa began, but was interrupted by the boy with purple hair. Did you get the book? Shinszo asked. Yeah, but I don't know who. It's Midoriya. The rest of their night was spent writing down and studying the messages Midoriya had prepared for them days earlier. They know your master's weakness, Midoriya asserted, though it was a lie. Shigaraki's eyes widened in disbelief. Nonsense. Master doesn't have any weaknesses. So, he didn't mention his serious injury? Midoriya continued, I can understand why he kept it from you. He didn't want you to worry again, right? But what can we do? We can't let him face any hero, especially when they could take him down in one blow. Can we? Shut up. You're just making this up. How would you know anything about it, huh? And even if Master had a serious injury, he has a strong regeneration quirk, so joke's on you, Shigaraki retorted, but the lack of effect his words had on the green-haired boy only fueled his irritation. Well, regarding your first statement, All for One spent quite a few months in Tartarus. It's only natural that they examined him and learned about his serious injury, his weak spot. One hit, and it's over. Do you really think they wouldn't inform the heroes in training about a major weakness against a villain like All for One? Of course not. We all know about it. I'm just here to give you a warning. Midoriya replied. And about your second statement, his regeneration quirk isn't enough for him to heal properly. He will die, Midoriya added, a small smile creeping back onto his face. Shigaraki stood there, trying to process what the green-haired boy had just told him. Stupid. It's all just a stupid lie. There's no way. No way he will die. Or maybe. Shigaraki thought. What do you want? The light blue-haired villain asked. Let me fight. Midoriya extended his hand toward Shigaraki. Shigaraki stared at him for a few moments before reluctantly taking his hand, pinky finger out. That night they made a deal. By 5 in the morning, Yayarozu and Shinszo had finally decrypted the entire book. How did Midoriya manage to do this 3 days ago without anyone noticing? How long had he been planning all this? Did he really do it all alone? Regardless, the two were astonished. The messages indicated that All for One was planning to take control of Midoriya and then slowly build an army of high-ends. After that, he intended to launch attacks across Japan from various locations. But the thing was, the messages stated it was supposed to happen. It was no longer a possibility, as Midoriya was going to have them under control first. The next morning, the green-haired boy opened his eyes and stretched his arms. Like any normal person who had been kidnapped and was being held captive by the symbol of evil and a group of villains, he looked around for the time on his all-might-themed alarm clock. He furrowed his eyebrows when he noticed nothing on the desk next to his bed. He sat up straight and rubbed his eyes. Alright, he almost forgot. I'm not in my room, I'm in the villain's base, he mumbled to himself as he replayed the previous events in his mind. He was now in his new room, which looked pretty plain to him. Everything seemed plain without All Might, and he was certain that none of these people would let him have any of All Might's merchandise. He might be playing a villain, but that didn't mean he was no longer All Might's #1 fan. Jokes on the villains for thinking otherwise. Now that he thought about being a fan, he had to get that limited edition All Might figure that was. A knock on his bedroom door pulled him from his morning thoughts. Kurogiri opened the door as soon as Midoriya said it was open. The man instructed him to get dressed and eat breakfast because today would be his first session. Midoriya thought to himself. Regardless, he followed Kurogiri out. After a while, the green-haired boy found himself following Kurogiri down a flight of stairs that led to the underground part of the building. Along the way, he realized it was about time for All for One to use him for the real reason he had been kidnapped in the first place, providing quirks. Impatient, Midoriya mentally noted, recognizing this characteristic of the symbol of evil he had seen twice before. He had just received the duplication quirk yesterday, and now he was already going to start taking quirks from him? Did Midoriya even have the quirks All for One required? Perhaps he wanted a quirk that originally belonged to someone from UA? Or a pro-hero Midoriya had interacted with before. Could it be another villain? Or maybe even a civilian. Perhaps Aizawa's? That could be really beneficial, and if it were him in that position, he would probably. Is it a habit of yours? Kurogiri asked. Midoriya smiled awkwardly, realizing he had been mumbling this whole time. Yeah. You could say that, he replied with a nervous chuckle. Well, here we are, Kurogiri said, stopping and pointing to a metal door in front of him. He's waiting inside. Midoriya nodded as he walked into the room after Kurogiri left. All for One was standing near a metal chair that certainly did not look comfortable. A wicked grin appeared on his scarred face as he saw the green-haired boy. Midoriya gulped. It was safe to say he still felt a little scared near that man. Endeavor had tracked down all 5 of the phone numbers, identifying their owners, last phone calls, and current locations. From the looks of it, whoever had given him that book certainly wasn't sure which of the 5 would actually be beneficial to him. If only he knew it was just a first-year student trying his best to prevent Japan from being utterly destroyed by the hands of All for One. 3 of the 5 were just random citizens who didn't seem remotely connected to the mystery of Izuku Midoriya's kidnapping case. However, the 4th and 5th belonged to an unknown person and a pro-hero, respectively. Through the call history and recorded calls, it was confirmed that the unknown person was none other than a member of the League of Villains, Dabi. The pro-hero was Best Jeanist, who had been reported to be recovering. What connected these two? Endeavor then turned to another page of the book and began decrypting it. After a minute or two, his eyes widened. After reading what was written there, Endeavor made a personal call to UA, requesting them to hand over the case of the kidnapped student to his agency. What? How do you even know a student was kidnapped? Present Mick's concern was understandable. Only the Hero Corps students and the staff members were aware of Hatsume's situation. How did he find out? Did a student report it to him? Was it Todoroki? So, it's true. Considering that, the other things written in that book must be true as well. Endeavor mumbled to himself, not caring that he was still on the call. What book? Present Mike yelled. Mike, calm down. All Might interjected. The teachers and the principal were in the meeting room, participating in a group call. Endeavor, will you kindly explain how you know about our student and why you wish to take the case? Nizu asked, quieting everyone else. They heard the flame hero sigh. Listen, someone sent me this book with cryptic messages, and I don't know why or how, but whoever sent this knew about this situation before it happened. They wrote certain things to follow for a safe path to solve this case. And judging by the loud cockatoo's reaction, everything written is so far true. And who are you calling a loud cockatoo? Present Mike slammed his fists on the table. You. Aizawa replied. Is there anything that indicates who that book could be from, Endeavor? Nizu asked. Present Mike could be seen hissing at Aizawa in the background like a rebellious child. My first and only guess is the commission. There's a sign on the last page, Endeavor replied. When Midoriya worked hard to put those messages in that book, he knew that the heroes would definitely get suspicious if it was from a random person. So, to make them follow the book properly, Midoriya left a fake signature of the head of the Public Safety Commission. The head shouldn't have signed every provincial hero license if he didn't want his signature to get faked or copied, though. After a few minutes, Nizu replied and gave Endeavor the case. However, he instructed him to keep this situation under wraps, even after Midoriya was back safely. Hopefully, he would return safely. After this session, as Kurogiri called it, Midoriya was grateful he was used to immense amounts of pain because it felt like his head was going to explode after All for One took Todoroki's quirk. Get used to it, the green-haired boy thought as he clutched his head in both hands. At least he knew how much it would hurt each time, allowing him to mentally prepare himself for it, considering the fact that the villain would take another quirk from him, which he was supposed to receive today. Finally shaking off the sudden dizziness, Midoriya stood up and started walking toward the door. Just then, All for One's words stopped him in his tracks as he slowly turned to face him. Yes? Midoriya asked, standing straight with his hands locked behind his back. I have some questions for you, All for One said. He wanted to double-check the boy's true intentions, so activating a quirk that allowed him to see through someone's words, he began, Say, Would you take a life? The villain didn't have to wait long for an answer. Depends, Midoriya replied immediately. So he would kill if it was necessary. That was a good start. What are your motives? All for One asked. Defeating my enemy, protecting my allies, Midoriya replied, his face stern. Yet another clear truth. All for One smirked. And who are your allies? I joined sides with you, didn't I? Midoriya replied. That was obvious. The villain chuckled. And what about Yue? Midoriya replied, Yue's in for a surprise. You are a smart boy, Midoriya. I know you have your own scheme going in your head. It is good to know you're not against us. For now, All for One stated. Anyhow, I would like to see something interesting marking your win, say, something involving your enemy. Something interesting with my enemy? Midoriya repeated. He didn't expect this. He didn't know All for One was going to give him ideas if he succeeded in gaining his trust. Or was the villain trying to draw out something else, like his true motives? Regardless, the green-haired boy decided to keep his guard up. All for One continued, you know, as I like to say, the crueler, the better. So, Midoriya pondered for a moment, or tried to appear as if he was thinking about what the villain asked him for. While he was really considering something that would be true, fitting to his plan, and wouldn't bring any harm to his dear, good, assumed enemies. Suddenly an idea struck him. The green-haired boy smirked as he addressed the villain. How about something you've never seen before? Oh, sounds interesting. What might that be? I'll make it rain blood. That statement was oddly true. Though the boy didn't specify whose blood would be raining or how he would do that. Yet it was true. Something destined to happen. And All for One couldn't wait to see it unfold. In his eyes, Midoriya walked out of that room as a villain. No longer a hero. Back at the dormitories, in Yaoyorozu's room, Shinszo said, Endeavor got the case faster than expected. The journal says he was supposed to figure it out tomorrow. But I guess he beat us to it. We were told to attack tomorrow evening, but if we wait that long, I believe there won't be any use. We'll have to go today, Yaoyorozu added. I'll message the ones we'll be taking. But, Jiru said, how are we going to follow Endeavor if Nizu told him to take it as an undercover mission? We weren't informed about the location either. Well, we don't have Mr. Number 1 Hero's son right across the hallway for nothing, Shinszo smirked, pointing at the door. The two girls nodded as Jiru started texting the selected ones for the attack, and Yaoyorozu headed toward Todoroki's dorm room with Shinszo. Peeking from the roof of a tall building in Tokyo, Shigaraki searched the quiet streets that wound between the buildings. It was 15 minutes past 11 in the morning. The plan was to look for a guy in his 20s with red short hair and get his quirk with Midoriya's help. That person would be lured in by Jiren, the league's own broker, at any moment now. All he had to do was focus and take note of where they would appear, ensuring that there was absolutely no one around except for just them. Shigaraki sighed. Hey, Shigaraki. The only problem was that he had to deal with Midoriya. Are you listening? Hey. And he was so incredibly annoying right now. What do you want, brat? Shigaraki asked, clearly irritated. Come on? Seriously? I thought we were on good terms since we made that deal about All for One's injury. Yeah, good terms, whatever. Just don't mention that, Shigaraki replied, sighing. What do you want? Midoriya meekly asked. I was just wondering, what kind of quirk are we here for? I mean, All for One didn't give me much detail about this. Shigaraki groaned before responding. As far as I know, it's a multiplier. I'm pretty sure you know the rest about it. In response, Midoriya nodded and began scanning the alleys. So, do you like Ohagi? What does that have anything to do with? Just then, the duo noticed Jiren walking in a back alley with a redhead they had been informed about. Shigaraki signaled to Midoriya as soon as Jiren brought the man to a dead end. The green-haired boy took the hint and jumped down using one for all, attempting to land a hit on the redhead who, as expected, used his quirk to counter Midoriya's attack. Done. Midoriya got the quirk. The two boys retreated immediately with Kurogiri's help, as Shigaraki called him. Meanwhile, Jiren took care of their target. So let me get this straight. Todoroki said, looking at Shinszo and Yaoyorozu as all three stood in his room. You want me to lead you guys right behind my dad on an undercover mission to rescue Midoriya from an unknown villain hideout? Midoriya could be in serious danger, Todoroki. The heterochromatic boy sighed. Who else is coming? Oh, it's just me, Shinszo, and a few others, Yaoyorozu replied with a small thankful smile. And so, about 7 students from both Class 1A and Class 1B prepared for their attack that night. Since Todoroki was included, they could easily access Endeavor's number, track it, and follow him to the hideout. These students included Shinszo, Yaoyorozu, Todoroki, Minoma, Komori, Shiozaki, and Kaibara. While these 7 would be gone for their leader's rescue, Jiraiya would create a distraction for them. Hopefully, things would go according to plan, even if they were moving out a day earlier. Endeavor found Best Jeanist just moments before Dabi. It was half an hour past 4, and they were in Yokohama City. The moment the Flame Hero's eyes landed on Best Jeanist, he spotted Dabi entering through a warp gate. The Flame Hero hid himself as he observed Dabi's movements. According to the journal, the only way to get to the new villain hideout was to follow 2 villains, Dabi and Kurogiri. Now that Endeavor had found Dabi, he had left the case of Kurogiri in Hawk's hands about an hour ago. Hopefully, the winged hero had found his target by now. As if on cue, he received a message from the younger hero signaling that he had found Kurogiri and was now creating warp gates for Dabi. At this, Endeavor looked back to where Dabi was, only to notice that the villain was carrying an unconscious Best Jeanist in front of a warp gate, likely heading back to the hideout. When it was confirmed that no one was in sight, Endeavor called Hawks. He took him. Send me your location. Now. Roger. Hawks replied through his communication device. Soon, the new number 1 got the location and immediately moved out. They were putting a student's and a pro hero's life at risk for something they didn't fully understand. Had to hurry. Unknown to him, while he was following Dabi, a small group of 7 students was following him. Now, around 6, Dabi was back at the villain's hideout with an unconscious Best Jeanist. Though the villain knew he was being followed, he wasn't overly concerned. He had completed his task and wasn't in the mood for a fight, so he left the rest of the work to the other villains. In the underground lab, Best Jeanist was seen in the metallic chair where Midoriya had received the new quirk. All for One and Midoriya were the only ones present in the lab, aside from the unconscious hero. Midoriya was not pleased. He had anticipated that this situation would take another day or so and had directed everyone accordingly. But now that Dabi had completed his task earlier, there was an abrupt change in the timeline of his original plan. If Endeavor didn't rush in, or if the 7 students at UA didn't hurry, Midoriya's first plan would be compromised. He did have a plan B, but the first plan had a better chance of success than the alternative, so it would be a gamble if he didn't wait to see if anyone was coming or if he should immediately shift to plan B. Acting on plan B too soon could lead to chaos and unnecessary casualties. In any case, Midoriya decided that the moment All for One was about to begin the treatment on Best Jeanist, he would shift to plan B, a head-on battle with the symbol of evil in a deserted area away from the population. But realistically, taking All for One to any deserted area would be quite troublesome since he knew more about Midoriya's new quirk. There could be weaknesses he had never disclosed, and the stakes were high. That's why he wished a hero would come breaking through the ceiling, sticking to his original plan. You don't look excited about this, Midoriya. Got something on your mind? All for One asked, snapping the green-haired boy back to reality. Oh well, Midoriya scratched the back of his neck. I've never seen how a Nomu is made, so I guess it's just a natural reaction. All for One smiled in a way that sent shivers down Midoriya's spine. Is that so? Well, allow me to demonstrate. Midoriya gulped as he watched the villain's hand reach toward him, inches away. Sweat lined Midoriya's forehead. Centimeters away. He was ready to shift to plan B. That was until the sounds of chaos from the floor above reached them. All for One immediately withdrew his hand and turned around, his expression one of shock. Midoriya mirrored that surprise. Taking a quick flight up the stairs, they found themselves in the midst of destruction and debris from the wrecked building. A large smoky fire blazed on the left side, reaching up into the night sky. To the left, Midoriya spotted Endeavor and Hawks. More than half of the League of Villains were already down: Toga, Twice, Mr. Compress, and Dabi. On the right, 7 students clad in their hero costumes stood ready. Shigaraki and Spinner were at the far end of Midoriya's view. "This is it," Midoriya murmured under his breath. A confident smirk spread across his face as he looked up at the sky, extending his arms outward. "You guys just started a fire you cannot put out." This was the moment his real plan began. He hadn't just tricked the villains into this battle, he had also deceived the heroes and his classmates. It felt incredible when your plan had multiple layers, and others could only grasp a fraction of it. What? You expected him to reveal his actual plan? Nope. He divided it, spread it, commanded them the one thing he learned from Baku. They didn't even realize what they were truly doing. It's great to build trust among your team, form bonds, and explain everything to them. But sometimes you have to play them. You have to take charge. Now, to the villains, Midoriya had already joined them, gained their trust, and figured out their plans. He had harnessed their own power through his clever trickery. He couldn't help but smirk. They wouldn't attack him. Why would they? He was the one fighting for them. In Shigaraki's eyes, Midoriya was the only one capable of handling the heroes. They were looking to him for help. And that's where they were mistaken. On the other side, to the heroes, Midoriya was merely a source of confirmed information. They wouldn't force him to return to UA, they were instructed to leave him there and take Best Jeanist instead. He could continue with his little scheme once they departed. They were misled into believing that the boy was likely on a mission conducted by the Commission. He was just a student gathering intelligence on the villains. That's where they were wrong. And finally, to his dear friends, he was meant to be rescued. He was just a victim who had asked for help indirectly while he gathered information. They had no idea about his true plan. They were probably going to come to him and try to safely bring him back to UA High as instructed in the journal. Midoriya had told them he would return in 5 days, but he also instructed them to come to his rescue as soon as Endeavor got involved. They knew he would gather information, but to them, this boy was playing the victim as well. They were determined to rescue him, and Midoriya knew that. That's why what would happen next would brilliantly support his plan. Snapping out of his thoughts, the boy looked around. He stood calmly amidst the utter chaos unfolding around him, unable to suppress a smile. Shigaraki was engaged in a fierce struggle against All for One instead of the heroes. The boy looked desperate, trying to keep his mentor from fighting. He appeared so naive, attempting to push All for One out of the battlefield while commanding the last standing villain, Spinner, to handle the others just as Kurogiri arrived on the scene with Gigantomachia. Endeavor was preoccupied with the Nomu after he saw his son and shouted, "Shoto," who remained unfazed while Hawks dealt with the others alongside the 7 teenagers ready to confront their enemy. With incredible speed, Hawks pinned down Kurogiri. The winged hero turned to see that Todoroki had frozen Spinner in place, rendering him immobile for the moment. Shiozaki and Yaoyorozu held down the unconscious ones just in case. Komori and Kaibara fled downstairs to assist Best Jeanist. Shinszo and Monoma searched for Midoriya, who stood amidst the smoke and debris, hidden from their sight. Shigaraki and All for One seemed almost absent now. "What are you kids doing here anyway?" "We were told to rescue Midoriya." A clash in their plans. What Hawks knew was they were supposed to leave Midoriya, while the students believed they were meant to take him. A perfect distraction that bought the green-haired boy enough time to skillfully evade their sight. All Might would be proud. Now standing away from the destruction, Midoriya closed his eyes, enjoying the cool breeze that flowed past him. He was on top of one of the hills surrounding the hideout. It was relaxing, yes. Endeavor was engaged in a fierce battle, and Best Jeanist was in a precarious situation, along with a few of his friends, but it was kind of fun. He mentally noted to do more of this once he embraced the role of a villain. Though he shouldn't get too attached to this feeling. After all, he was a hero in training, All Might's successor, the next symbol of peace, and so on. He had never noticed how beautiful fire looked until now. He took a deep breath, reminding himself not to relax too much. What if someone was there and... A voice interrupted his thoughts. Is this your scheme we discussed? He turned to see All for One, an unreadable smile on the green-haired boy's face. What was his expression? Petty, pleased, sly, sympathetic? Perhaps a combination of all. Maybe. Maybe not. You have good cover-ups for betrayals too, huh? Maybe. Maybe not. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. Maybe. Maybe not. All for One chuckled. This boy was testing him. But he too was the symbol of evil. He wouldn't go down easily. He wasn't completely in the shadows. He had prepared a counter just in case. He could technically eliminate the boy right there, but he could also do it slowly and painfully. Perhaps the boy had already considered the possibility that All for One had a final trick up his sleeve, and perhaps he did. For now, he decided to take the low road and wait for Midoriya to see what he would do before acting. In the end, it was just a game, and the winner would be whoever planned ahead of the other. All for One smiled to himself. Finally, an opponent who fought differently, someone who used different strategies and viewed every angle on the battlefield. It was refreshing to have a worthy competition once in a while. He was about to speak when Endeavor came crashing down onto the hill, with Gigantomachia following closely behind, ready to attack the already injured hero once more. Gigantomachia roared, sending a shockwave through the area. Midoriya nearly raised his arms to shield his eyes but managed to maintain his calm posture. All for One stepped back, eager to see what the green-haired boy would do next. Would he save the hero? Fight Gigantomachia? Leave the battle as it was? Each decision would determine his next move, and he needed to see what Midoriya would choose. Gigantomachia prepared to strike before Endeavor could fully recover. With one swift motion, the Nomu brought down his fist, causing a massive impact that shook the ground and sent everyone nearby stumbling. When the dust settled and Gigantomachia retracted his hand, he found only a large indentation in the ground where Endeavor had been. Instead of the flame hero, there was an open warp gate, reminiscent of Kurogyri's abilities. The Nomu looked around, realizing that Midoriya had opened the warp gate and sent Endeavor to safety, possibly back to where the other heroes were. But was the problem truly resolved? When had UA's infamous problem children ever made things easy? From the warp gate that led Endeavor to safety, Todoroki, Monoma, and Shinszo emerged in search of their green-haired friend, only to confront the monstrous Gigantomachia. Seeing this, Gigantomachia prepared to attack again, but Midoriya was quicker. With a sharp yell of, "Look out!" Midoriya activated Best Jeanist quirk, which he had barely managed to grasp earlier. He used the quirk to pull all three of his friends behind him, utilizing one for all to enhance his strength. Just as he set his friends down with one hand, he created a warp gate behind Gigantomachia that connected to a new one in front of himself. Using Best Jeanist's quirk again through the warp gate, he summoned fibers from the gate behind Gigantomachia. The fibers latched onto the Nomu's back and shoulders, despite his struggles. Midoriya pulled the strings toward himself, forcing Gigantomachia toward the warp gate behind him. But just before the Nomu could enter, Midoriya created another warp gate in a random location somewhere in the middle of the ocean and left Gigantomachia there, retracting the strings. Well, he's going to have fun finding his way back, Midoriya muttered to himself as he closed all the warp gates. Midoriya, his friends called out, and he turned to see their serious, concerned faces. It's okay, guys. You did your part well. But what was that? Multiple quirks? Or was that something like mine? Monoma asked, clearly confused. Midoriya replied calmly, relax. I'll explain later. To use Kurogyri's and Jeanist's quirk, Todoroki pondered, it was all for one, right? Midoriya nodded. Wait a second. Midoriya's expression shifted to one of realization. Both Kurogyri's and Jeanist's quirk? This was wrong, completely wrong. That shouldn't even be possible. All for One had claimed that the duplicate quirk could only support one duplicate at a time. How had Midoriya used both without feeling any adverse effects? Was All for One lying? Or was this the result of some other quirk he didn't know about? Nonsense, he was familiar with almost all the quirks. So what? Midoriya suddenly coughed, blood escaping his lips as he dropped to his knees. His friends rushed to his side, alarmed by his condition. Midoriya! Shinszo exclaimed, noticing the blood on Midoriya's hand. Before any of them could reach him, Midoriya opened another warp gate beneath them, sending them back downhill to Hawks and the others except for Todoroki. Midoriya, what's going on? The heterochromatic boy asked, sitting beside him and placing a hand on his back. Midoriya looked at him with weary eyes. Tell Endeavor I said, C9-4 when you go back. And do not mess it up. E9-4. What's that? You'll find out eventually. Another fit of coughs interrupted him, and he motioned for Todoroki to stay back. The coughing continued, and Midoriya struggled to catch his breath, sweat beading on his forehead as he felt a searing pain in his body. His muscles cramped, and his head felt light he might lose consciousness at any moment. So, All for One had lied to him. When he said there was no drawback to this quirk, he had been hiding the truth. Well played. But the war wasn't over yet. It was a game of deception. Now, with blood trickling down his mouth, Midoriya chuckled softly. You had me there, I have to admit. He stood up and faced the villain. All for one, he said, but we are far from done yet. Oh, I believe you are right, All for One replied. But there isn't much left to fight for either. Midoriya gave him a questioning look. All for One elaborated, each time you use this quirk, it stores all the pains of directly taking in those quirks, including their drawbacks, and then releases them in an outburst like the one you just experienced. If you keep using this quirk even once or twice more, you'll die. And I doubt you can defeat me with that quirk of yours. Midoriya's eyes widened as he processed this information. So, it's safe to say, you don't have much time left, boy. That's amusing. I will die, huh? Midoriya looked down, a smile creeping onto his face. I won't. After all, I have to play the villain, and I promised you a good storm. Midoriya said, I don't know about you, All for One, but even if I was lying, my promises are not empty. I'm a man of my word, and you will see it firsthand. Soon. HM? Is that so? All for One replied. How about we ask for Tamura's opinion? At that moment, Shigaraki emerged from the shadows. Midoriya took a step back, realizing that Shigaraki had overheard their conversation. He knew about the lie Midoriya had told him, and it seemed likely that he was going to retaliate. Was this part of his plan? Perhaps not. Maybe your lie about my injury was exposed too soon. Don't worry, I'll let you two sort this out on your own, All for One said as he walked away, likely to deal with the other heroes. A tense silence followed. Shigaraki glared at Midoriya, his anger palpable. Midoriya bit his lip, contemplating his next move. Todoroki was increasingly worried about the situation. I should have known. You deceiver. I shouldn't have trusted you. Shigaraki muttered, slowly advancing. Todoroki, it's getting dangerous. I'm sending you all back to you, Midoriya said, not even glancing at him, his focus fixed on the villain. I'm not leaving you alone. Remember, C9-4. With that, Midoriya held his side and opened warp gates beneath every hero, sending them to the one he had opened at UA's coordinates. The last thing Todoroki saw was Shigaraki reaching out toward Midoriya. The disintegration began. Todoroki found himself back at UA High. A few minutes after Shigaraki attacked Midoriya, All for One stood on the sidelines, observing the ruined building with an unreadable expression. He had already relocated the other villains to a safer location and was now waiting for either Shigaraki or Midoriya to emerge, depending on who won the battle, so he could take his next step. And soon enough, the victor appeared. Ah, you're back. I take it things went well? All for One turned to the boy, smiling. You don't have to worry about him anymore. Master, Shigaraki replied, smirking. He's nothing but dust now. His demise will make for a great story to tell you. I can't wait to see their reactions. Won't that be amazing? Perhaps it will be better than having him as a villain, All for One nodded. Come on, we have places to be now, Tamura. Shigaraki lingered for a moment before All for One warped them both to where the rest of the league was. He had said he would take care of all the nuisances, and he was pleased to see his plan unfolding smoothly. No one had to worry about Izuka Midoriya anymore. No one had to. Will someone kindly explain what's going on here? Aizawa asked the 7 students and 2 pro heroes who had just fallen from the sky into UA's training grounds. They had already sent Best Jeanist to a nearby hospital. Thankfully, he was still alive. None of them spoke, exchanging nervous glances. Almost all of UA's teaching staff and the principal stood before them, waiting for an answer that could clarify the situation. If it had just been the students from Class 1A- Shinszo, who had no idea what kind of trouble he was in, Aizawa would have understood everything without them needing to say a word. But it wasn't every day that Class 1B was involved in their activities, and of course, the presence of the number 1 and number 2 heroes, who weren't affiliated with the school, added to the confusion. When no answer came, Aizawa spoke up, Shinszo. He looked at the purple-haired boy for an explanation. Shinszo bit his lower lip nervously and glanced at his classmates before looking back at his homeroom teacher, who raised an eyebrow, waiting for a response. We were told to follow Endeavor on his mission and rescue Midoriya from the villains. I don't think any of us had a clear idea of what we were doing because Hawks said we weren't supposed to rescue him. We were just following orders. Shinszo replied, looking down, trying his best to be honest while avoiding details about Midoriya's plans. Orders from whom? Aizawa pressed. Air. The commission, Endeavor interjected, and I believe I mentioned that to you all earlier. And young Midoriya? All Might asked, concern etched on his face. That question hit Todoroki like a ton of bricks. He was the last person to see Midoriya. He was the only one there. He had witnessed Shigaraki using his quirk on the green-haired boy. He felt helpless, unable to do anything to help. He had left him alone, watching as he began to disintegrate. The guilt weighed heavily on him. If he had been there, he could have at least fought the villain, and the worst outcome would have been a few injuries for both of them. Not this. Wasn't Todoroki the one who came in last? Monoma pointed out, and everyone turned to the heterochromatic boy for a response. Todoroki took a deep breath. Midoriya. He's gone. They all stared at him, not wanting to consider the implications of his words. Gone? All Might asked, gone where? What exactly happened to him, young Todoroki? The retired hero mentally pleaded for Todoroki not to say it. He hoped the boy would say something like the villains took Midoriya to another location, or that Midoriya had escaped. Something along those lines, rather than the most obvious conclusion. All Might wasn't sure he was ready to hear that his successor was gone. Todoroki looked down, clenching his fists. I think we all know what I meant. A heavy silence fell over the group. No one dared to speak. Nizu sighed. Students, head to Recovery Girl's office for any injuries and then return to your dormitories. We'll discuss this later. Endeavor Hawks, my office. I need a quick rundown on the situation. Then you're both free, the principal added. Everyone simply followed the instructions given. Red eyes scanned the room. It appeared to be an ordinary space. There was nothing to indicate why All for One had brought him there. Heck, he didn't even know what or where this place was. Tamura Shigaraki turned to look at his so-called master. Why are we here? You see how the heroes had a clear notion of our previous location? All for One asked. Shigaraki nodded. This is a completely unknown area to them. I have to keep you and your league here hidden. As for transportation, I'll have Kurogiri know about all the necessary coordinates. This place has everything you'll need, so don't worry about a thing. All for One continued. May I also add that there is a whole army of Nomus underground, already prepared to confront the heroes at your command? Shigaraki's eyes widened. But, Master, we didn't even start creating those Nomus. How did you? You're right, Tamura. We were supposed to make an army of high-ends. But you've already seen the circumstances we've been put through. All for One replied. I had a feeling the boy might betray us. Even after he answered all those questions honestly. So, I prepared a patch of about 100 normal Nomus just in case. Shigaraki took a moment to process what All for One just told him. So, Midoriya wasn't the only one who planned ahead, huh? All for One was trying to play the same game as him. Master, Shigaraki smiled. That's outstanding. Quite, All for One smiled back. You can progress your plan without any trouble. But there's one thing. When you retrieved a few villains along with me, there was this man, Kai Chisaki. I'm pretty sure you remember him. All for One stated. Why would All for One bring him up? He had already stolen his quirk. What else could he want from him? Shigaraki nodded, impatiently waiting for the symbol of evil to proclaim his condition. I did some research and read his files. And I found something of use. Something beneficial to all of us. All for One said. Shigaraki stared at him, curiosity rising within him. I want the girl alive. Oh, he wanted Eri. Endeavor sat in his office, having just returned from UA after filling Nizu in on everything that had happened. The flame hero stared at the text he received from his son, then back at the book he was given. Scene 9-4. Endeavor pondered for a while, what could those numbers mean? The book wasn't divided into sections, so why was there a C? The 9 and the 4 could easily refer to a page, paragraph, or line. What was the purpose of the alphabet? He turned to page 9, line it started with a C, and after that, everything was blacked out. He sighed and rubbed his thumb against the paper, growing impatient. Suddenly he felt something. The blacked out part of the paper came off. This wasn't ink. This was just a black sheet. How did he not notice that? There was a note between the paper and the sheet. The whole plan that the heroes were supposed to follow was written out on it. Whatever mastermind was controlling their actions through cryptic books sure knew how to do his thing. The following day at UA High. Unlike the usually lively preparations that went on campus, things looked a lot more dull. Since everything that had recently happened had been kept a secret from most of the student body and the media, those who knew couldn't help but feel the pressure weighing on them. A student was reported dead. The villains were planning a big attack. Only 2 pro-heroes were taking action. Nizu could call off the festival at any moment. And only they knew that. Those who went to save Midoriya from the villains told their classmates about what happened. For Todoroki, the hardest part to describe was what happened to the green-haired boy in the end. It was a shock to all of them. But they were instructed to not act any differently. And it was killing them to pretend like nothing happened. On the other hand, Eri started to worry when Midoriya didn't come to see her for 2 days in a row. They usually spent time together during his free time with Mirio. But now he wasn't there. Did something bad happen? She asked Mirio, but he said he hadn't seen or heard from Midoriya in a while either. She hoped he was fine. Mirio just left her back at the teachers' dormitories as something came up with his classmates. Eri sat down on the couch in the common area, alone, waiting for him to come back. A warp gate appeared behind her. Immediately sensing something was off, the little girl jumped off the couch and turned to face what appeared behind her, worry etched across her face. But she didn't call for anyone. She didn't yell for help. She didn't run or back away. She was about to, but she stopped when she saw who it was. Did I scare you? I'm sorry, that wasn't my intention. Midoriya scratched the back of his head as he stepped out of the warp gate. Deku. Eri looked at him with big, worried eyes, moving her fists up and down. Are you okay? Or were you? It's been 2 days and you didn't come too? She was cut off by the boy. Oh, that. Midoriya leaned down to her height and whispered, well, I was planning a surprise for you. Surprise? Eri repeated. Midoriya stood up and nodded. Do you want to see? He extended his scarred hand towards the little girl invitingly. Okay. Eri said as she placed her small hand in his larger one and held on. Then let's go. Midoriya smiled as he led Eri towards the warp gate. The red-eyed girl took one glance back before stepping into the warp gate right after Midoriya, not letting go of his hand. She wondered what kind of surprise Deku had for her. What kind of surprise took 2 days of complete disappearance? And what was this black-purple misty thing? Deku couldn't control anything like that before. Why now? At least, not that she knew of. Guess her answers lay beyond the warp gate. Stepping out, still holding onto the green-haired boy's hand, Eri looked around to find herself in an unfamiliar place, surrounded by unfamiliar faces. Some expressions told her she had made a wrong move, that she might be in some serious danger. There was a blonde high school girl with a knife sitting on a chair, smiling at her. A man was covered in that black-purple mist. Another man dressed in a black and gray costume stood beside the girl, looking rather amusing. A magician Hado had told her all about magicians. A teenage mutant ninja turtle, she didn't know they were real. One of them had many burns, and his skin appeared somewhat purple. She wondered if they could heal. But it was okay. Even if they scared her a little, Eri had her hero on her side. She didn't need to fear anything. Deku was there to protect her if they tried anything. Besides, he was the one who brought her here, so he wouldn't let anything bad happen to her. So, it was all okay. Well, wasn't that easy? Another person appeared from behind. Eri turned around to see a light blue-haired man with pale skin. Before she could ask Deku what was going on, the light blue-haired man placed his hand on the boy's shoulder, and Eri watched in shock as Deku began to fade away, his lower half turning to mud. Before she had time to react, her hero was gone. Midoriya was gone, right in front of her eyes. She felt her heart drop. She was alone. Fear rushed over the little girl as she took a step back, gasping for breath. Her eyes widened as she stared at her own hand that had held on to Midoriya just moments earlier. She trembled, tears brimming in her big red eyes. Her bottom lip quivered as she struggled to form proper words. But why does everyone close to her have to disappear? Eri thought. She thought this time no one would have to go away. She thought he wouldn't leave her again. She thought she didn't have to be alone anymore. She thought the suffering had ended already. She thought she was safe. Then why? Deku. And no, please. Eri tried her best to hold back her tears, her small hands covering her ears. Don't act so emotional. That was just a clone. Shigaraki rolled his eyes, unfazed by the child's reaction. Eri jolted up, her eyebrows furrowed, looking at the villain with big teary eyes. There was a chance that Midoriya was safe. But let's just say I already killed him. So, don't expect a rescue. Eri's expression fell again. What's? Now, coming to think of it, it all made sense. Why hadn't Midoriya come to visit her? Why hadn't they hung out with Mirio? Why wasn't anyone talking about him? Why did all the smiles look fake? Why wasn't there that excitement she had before? Why didn't Mirio know anything that happened to him? Why was Mr. Aizawa quieter than usual? Why did class look so sad? It was all because Midoriya wasn't there anymore. And Midoriya wasn't there anymore because of these people. And once she realized that, the fear in her eyes immediately turned to anger. So much anger, words couldn't describe. Eri clenched her fists, tears finally trickling down her cheeks. Tamura, look what you did. She's crying now. Toga exclaimed, her smile unwavering. And Eri hated that. So? What do you think, I'm gonna sing her a lullaby or something? Shigaraki said, besides, if Master wants her alive, she better start accepting the reality of loss soon. She's going to see a lot of it. Shigaraki then got down on his knees to get to Eri's eye level. He smirked malevolently, especially a hero's end. Eri only glared at him. Red, angry eyes trying to appear intimidating, but the tears weren't helping. They weren't getting away with this. They were not getting away with this. She was done acting like it was okay when someone disappeared. She was done standing back against villains. She was done being used when someone who tried to protect her was taken away. She was done holding back. She was done being helpless against villains like these. She was done being powerless. She was done with risking others' lives. Now follow me. Master's waiting for us. And he doesn't like waiting. Shigaraki stood up and roughly grabbed Eri's arm, dragging her out of the room despite her struggles and cries. Eri's shouts of, "Let me go," and "Leave me alone," soon faded away. The room was silent. "Come now, Eri, I'll take you to a place where you can comfortably rethink your decision." For a moment, everything went black. The next thing Eri knew, she was surrounded by at least 100 nomas. The villain brought her to the underground basement where they were keeping all the nomas for the time being. Staring at the enormous bioengineered monsters, Eri stumbled to the ground, clenching her chest as her mind raced with possibilities of what could happen next. In response to her troubled expression, All for One spoke up, Relax. They won't hurt you. Not for the time being, at least. Anyway, now you have plenty of time to think about my proposal. But wait, let me rephrase it for you real quick. Serve me or join them. What's? Eri looked at him with fearful eyes. You heard me. If you defy me or the League, you will be giving me all the more reasons to turn you into one of them. To turn you into a Nomu. All for one said, and then, once you're a Nomu, you will naturally become an enemy of society and a partner of violence. You won't be able to look at anyone for help except for me. No one would come to your aid. The heroes would want to get rid of you for good. You'll be helpless without me. Your life will lose all its meaning. Your only purpose will be to serve me. So, won't it be better if you be a good girl and join me yourself? Eri didn't reply. The little girl only scowled at him, yet her bottom lip quivered. All right then. You have a lot of time to think. I'll leave you here now. All for one slowly waved a hand, and don't make me wait too long. You know what will happen if you do. With that, the symbol of villain teleported out of the room, leaving the girl with absolutely no clue about the exit. She wouldn't be able to escape. She didn't even know what this place was. She didn't know if the heroes would even come for her. She didn't know how much longer she had to stay there. She was scared, but she would act patient and still wait for someone to save her. She wouldn't give in to the villain's desires. She would never join the dark side. And those were her final decisions. Decisions she didn't want to rethink. But right now, aside from what side she joined, the uneasy feeling never left her as one of the Nomus reached down to her and just stared at her, not doing anything. Eri froze in fear, staring at the mutated being before her. Time seemed to stretch as her silent pleas for help echoed in her mind. It felt like an eternity before anyone arrived. The next day, Aizawa was bewildered by the unfolding events. First, Midoriya was taken away without incident, and then Endeavor informed them that the commission was involved. Shortly after, Mirio approached him with the news that Eri was missing. Now, they were faced with a new directive. A team of pro-heroes was to raid a secret location to eliminate a significant number of troublesome Nomus. Aizawa was initially okay with the mission until he learned that UA's Hero Corps students would be accompanying them. That was where he drew the line. His student had already been lost, and a child was missing. He refused to put more students in harm's way, especially against Nomus. He would have protested vehemently if Nizu hadn't already set the plan in motion. As their homeroom teacher, he felt he should have had a say, but the principal had sided with the so-called mastermind, as Endeavor referred to him and his strategy. Now, Aizawa found himself alongside All Might and Vlad King, calling parents to inform them of the situation. Why are we doing this? The children are already gone, Aizawa remarked after finishing a call with Mitsuki Bakugu, who seemed far too calm about the news. Nizu made a quick decision. The parents deserve to know, Vlad King replied, continuing his calls. Aizawa? All Might's voice broke through Aizawa's thoughts. What? Aizawa turned to see All Might looking down at the list of Class 1A students' contact numbers. It's young Midoriya's turn. For a moment, everything felt suspended. They hadn't informed his mother yet. This was going to be challenging. Should I tell her? All Might asked. Aizawa remained silent, as did Vlad King. Should they really tell her? Weren't they supposed to protect her son? If they had to inform her, shouldn't they have done it sooner? Would she be able to handle the news? But wouldn't it be cruel not to tell Inko that her son was missing? After what felt like an eternity, Aizawa nodded, signaling All Might to tell Inko the truth. Taking a deep breath, All Might dialed her number. Away from the chaos, the third book finally reached its destination that morning. Its journey was long and complex, moving from a bookstore to a grocery store, then to a post office far from the city, and finally to the one closest to the residential area. Every twist and turn ensured that anyone following the book would struggle to find its intended recipient. Midoriya had written everything in there, things he hadn't shared with his classmates or the pro-heroes. He trusted this person more than anyone else. Inko Midoriya quietly placed the book on the table after reading a few pages. She wanted to reassure her son that he didn't need to take such dangerous risks. The book felt like a collection of heartfelt letters from a son to a mother in a distant battle. As she settled onto the couch, her phone rang. It was All Might. "Hello," she answered. "Ah, sorry to disturb you so early, Mrs. Midoriya." All Might's voice came through the line. "Oh no, it's fine." Inko paused, sensing the gravity of the conversation. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, it's about that." All Might hesitated. I don't know how to break this to you. But your son." All Might took a deep breath. "Young Izuku is missing." The line fell silent. Inko bit her lip, struggling to process the news. I see. She finally said, "I'll talk later." Before anything else could be said, Inko ended the call and sank back onto the couch, picking up the book again. Izuku had always been a handful. Dabi, Toga, Twice, Muscular, and Spinner were sent to a different location. Kurogyri teleported them away, remaining behind. They found themselves in the mountains of Kyoto, checking on the second and last Nomu plant. Unlike the first, All for One had somehow secured government approval to use this site, though there was no mention of breeding Nomus. The villain ensured the location was well out of reach of the heroes. There wasn't much to do there. They searched the area, but the person responsible for creating the Nomus with All for One was absent. Shigaraki had suggested they go there, sensing something was about to happen, and All for One had agreed. Kurogyri had become like their family vehicle, while Mr. Compress stayed behind to monitor Eri through security cameras. Now, the 5 villains were present. "This is boring. When do we head back?" Toga complained. "Not until Kurogyri picks us up," Spinner replied, examining the incomplete Nomus secured in large glass tubes filled with chemicals. "Well, this place looks interesting." "Ugh, it smells terrible," Twice exclaimed. "Too bad you missed out on the last fight," Dabi smirked, turning away from the Nomus. When Endeavor last attacked with the others, Muscular was undergoing a healing process, as his body had weakened during his time in Tartarus, so he wasn't present. "Like you were looking alive there." Muscular was interrupted as Endeavor broke through the ceiling, landing a short distance away from the villains, just as he had done before. "What is up with this guy destroying ceilings?" Twice shouted. "Superhero landing. Also, why aren't there any supervillain landings? That's just sad." Following Endeavor, several other pro-heroes entered, including Hawks, Edge Shot, Present Mike, Cementos, Ectoplasm, and Mirko. Some students burst through the windows while others stood guard outside. Shinszo accessed the control panel, displaying security camera feeds on various screens and directing everyone using the maps shown on another screen. "What the hell? You know that you heroes aren't legally allowed to raid this place like this, right? You're putting your own careers at risk. The commission is with us on this, you idiots." Before Spinner could finish, Mirko delivered a swift kick that sent him crashing against the wall. "Oh, forget the rules. Who cares about a bunch of traitors?" Mirko smirked. Those were the 3 code words Midoriya had chosen for his big plan. Forget the rules. The other villains readied themselves for battle, still confused by the heroes' disregard for the commission that essentially controlled their actions. "You see, we were informed by a certain mastermind that the commission has a few traitors pulling strings to assist the villains," Hawks explained, drawing 2 sharp feathers to use as blades. "And since the commission decides who's legal and illegal, the mastermind told us that if we can't defeat you villains by legal means," Edge Shot added, "we have to take matters into our own hands. In other words," Endeavor declared, "we're going to defeat you villains your way. So, let's wreak havoc, everyone." Present Mike exclaimed to the students with them. Just like that, the battle of pure chaos began. But even then, for the pro-heroes and the majority of the student body, nobody really knew who the mastermind was. Eri had been trapped there for a day and a half, which felt like an eternity. The little girl glanced to her right and then to her left. There were only the Nomus, who couldn't think or move without orders. However, she noticed they reacted to her movements. She also spotted the security cameras in the room. Now, don't get me wrong, Eri had picked up a few tricks of her own. She wasn't completely helpless. Living in the harsh environment of Shai Hasaikai had given her enough experience to recognize when her captor was slacking off. As she moved around, the Nomus mirrored her actions. She positioned a few of them in front of the cameras so that even if someone was watching, they wouldn't see what was happening. Eri took a deep breath, looking down at the small device in her hands. It was so small it fit perfectly in her palm without raising suspicion. Apparently, it had come in with her without All For One noticing. She pressed the button on it. Forget the rules. There was a bright flash. All For One had just returned to the base with Shigaraki after attending a meeting with one of the so-called traitors from the commission. They had gone to check on the situation regarding Shigaraki's grand plan. Coincidentally, the moment they arrived back at the base was the exact moment the heroes attacked the Nomu plant. Pure coincidence. Totally unplanned. Well, that was a lie. Of course, it was planned by a certain mastermind who had been pulling the strings all along. But nobody knew, so it was never spoken of. All For One made his way to the central room of the building, where they coordinated all their operations. It resembled an office. Shigaraki followed quietly, a smile playing on his lips as they entered the room. They remained silent for a moment. So, how's the girl doing? Did she make a choice? All For One asked, breaking the silence as he sat down in a chair. I don't know. Compress is the one keeping watch on her, Shigaraki replied with a shrug, standing beside him. I see, All For One nodded. I'll talk with him later. You, however, seem happy. Shigaraki turned to the computers on the other side. Of course I am. Why wouldn't I be? I'm winning a war after all. First complete win must feel amazing, right? All For One said. Tell me about it. Have I ever told you how I enjoy long-term battles? Shigaraki quickly wiped his cheek with his arm and turned back, smiling. I know how you do it. It always looks impressive. But it sounds so time-consuming at the same time. It gets boring. All For One smiled before Shigaraki continued, you always get what you want. Even if you have to take risks, you prepare countermeasures. But it's mostly you who decides if you want to fight for days, weeks, or years. The other party never knows when you'll strike. Like your first battle with All Might. You made him believe you were dead, gathered your strength over the next 5 years, and returned to physically confront him, leading to his permanent retirement. Too bad the successor he left couldn't restore his glory. But I was able to restore yours, Master. That's right. That's right. All For One said. Just then, the communication systems began to beep, signaling that an important message had been received. All For One was about to check it when Shigaraki interrupted, I'll take a look. The blue-haired villain pressed a few buttons, and the screen displayed an incoming voice call, which he accepted. Hello? Oh, thank God. Finally someone picked up. Spinner's voice came through. What's wrong? You sound like something is being destroyed and there's no stopping it. Shigaraki said, raising an eyebrow. You have no idea how right you are for once. Some heroes just decided to barge in and cause chaos. I repeat, chaos. We are outnumbered here. We can't hold them off on our own. We need backup. Quick. Spinner yelled. All right. Backup's coming, you fool, Shigaraki replied. What was that? I'm not getting a clear signal. Can you? Before Spinner could finish, Shigaraki ended the call. All For One spoke up. Where is Kurojairi? I haven't seen him since we returned. You'll need him to get there. Why? What was that? Why do I need to go there? All For One didn't expect that. Tamura, those Nomus are central to your plan. And we sent more than half of the League. The League of Fools, Shigaraki said. If the heroes are wrecking our stuff, can't the League just use their heads and tell the Nomus to stop them? Tamura, the Nomus aren't programmed to respond to verbal commands. They only listen to the doctor, All For One argued. But Master, Shigaraki almost whined, imagine the destruction that would cause. The completed Nomus will attack them anyway, whether someone commands them or not. Who cares about who lives or dies? I just want to see the chaos. Just picture it, it would be incredible. You knew something like this would happen. That's why you sent them there. Is that right? All For One stood up, facing the boy directly. How am I supposed to know, Master? Shigaraki said, scratching his neck. I don't have the foresight for that. It took me so long to even plan this. But you have been doing well. You have certainly grown since I left you. You have only improved. All for One said. What? You're exaggerating now. I haven't changed that much, Shigaraki shrugged, turning his back towards the other villain. Is that so? I belie. All for One was cut off as another call appeared on a screen. This time, it was from Mr. Compress. Now, what could have happened? Earlier, Mr. Compress might or might not have dozed off while watching over Eri through the security cameras. Can you blame him though? Watching a young child just sitting between some gnomes isn't exactly thrilling. Plus, he preferred things with a twist, and this situation wasn't going anywhere near that. So, eventually he ended up falling asleep right then and there. Suddenly, something jolted him awake from his careless slumber. He sensed that something was happening, and whatever it was, it surely wasn't good. He quickly sat up and observed the screens to learn what was going on. To his dismay, all the screens were blacked out. The video was still ongoing, but something was blocking the view. Mr. Compress was about to head down to check what was going on when he suddenly heard crashing sounds, and the screens turned to static one by one. What the? Stumbling to his feet, Mr. Compress rushed down to the underground storage compartment, where all this commotion was taking place. Once he reached there, breathing heavily, he pushed open the huge metal doors and stepped inside. His eyes widened at the sight before him. The room was fairly large, designed to hold 100 gnomes. Of course it was spacious. But when filled with those bioengineered beings, it felt smaller. Now, with everything cleared out, it looked much larger. And that was exactly what Mr. Compress was experiencing right now. The area that was once filled with gnomes was now completely deserted. It was as if they had vanished. Unless you counted an unconscious Kurogiri tied to a chair in the middle of the compartment. Seeing this situation and considering the fact that only an untrained 6-year-old girl was left there, Mr. Compress knew someone. No, the mastermind was up to something dangerous. Mr. Compress immediately contacted All for One directly. He had to inform him. The villain thought that All for One could still stop this mastermind if he only knew how wrong he was. What is it, Compress? All for One asked while Shigaraki stood on the other side of the room, giving his teacher some space. As if I know anything. There's nothing. I don't even know if disaster is the right word to describe this. Mr. Compress exclaimed. Why? That was all the symbol of evil could ask at that moment. I don't know. Maybe because everything just disappeared and Kurogiri is unconscious. Wait, are you back at the base? How did you even get here without Kurogiri? What's going on? Mr. Compress questioned, and All for One could almost see him clutching his head in confusion. Relax. I'll check it out. Is the girl there? Mr. Compress replied, I said there's no one except Kurogiri. Get up here now. After Mr. Compress confirmed, the call ended, and All for One placed his hands on the sides of the keyboard, supporting himself over the desk. There was a moment of silence until Shigaraki coughed to get his attention. All for One chuckled. It really is amazing, you know. There hasn't been something like this for a long, very long time. Shigaraki stayed still, his expression unreadable. It's just like you said earlier, All for One continued, you really haven't changed at all. You are the same as you were before. At least from the time I've known you. What do you mean, Master? I don't understand. What are you talking about? Shigaraki asked, looking at his feet. Oh, is that so? Come on now, we both know what I meant. Let's not argue about it further, Tamura Shigaraki. Shigaraki looked up at him. Or should I call you by your real name? The light blue-haired boy smirked, slightly tilting his head. His eyes held anticipation. Izuku Midoriya. The last thing Todoroki saw before returning to UA High was Shigaraki disintegrating Midoriya's face. And that was it. That was all he knew. Thus, it led him to the most obvious assumption, Midoriya's death. There was already significant blood loss when it came to the green-haired boy's condition, and to top that, Shigaraki had started using his quirk on him. All for One, too, said that Midoriya didn't have much time left. What else could Todoroki think? Anyone in his shoes would have thought Midoriya was dead. While on the other hand, for Midoriya, things went a little differently. You see, Just when he warped all the heroes away from the scene while delivering his message, Midoriya found his plan going as smoothly as ever. Now, he never said he wanted to be a villain. Rather, he wanted to play one. He had a specific person in mind. He wasn't really going to become a villain, he was just going to act like one. And surely he wanted to play the villain, but playing dead was even better. Actually, it was more like one-sided playing dead. He was still going to play the villain, and the villain he was going to portray was none other than Tamura Shigaraki himself. So, after the villain had chipped off a side of his face thinking it would look convincing enough to make others believe he was dead, Midoriya activated erasure. In just one moment, Shigaraki's quirk stopped, and Midoriya punched him in the gut, sending him backward, despite the stinging pain that coursed through his body. You think any quirk is going to get you out of this? If anything, a quirk's just going to make it worse. Shigaraki said as he stood up. Oh, I don't think it will. There was a certain playfulness in Midoriya's tone. It was then that Shigaraki noticed the beige horn sticking out from the side of his forehead. A bright yellow flash, and Midoriya fixed all his injuries with utmost precision using Ares' quirk. It wasn't that difficult, it felt like he was using one for all. For an instant, 5% would heal the injuries of the user's body, while 100% would completely rewind everything. He was going to teach Eri that later. But for now, he needed to take care of Shigaraki. He placed his right hand on the ground below and, using Chisaki's quirk, let a thin but sharp spike grow toward Shigaraki. He didn't really attack to harm him, he just wanted a little blood. Okay, maybe more than a little blood since he was going to use Toga's quirk to impersonate Shigaraki. Grabbing a test tube-like object from his pocket that he had taken from All for One's lab earlier, he leaped forward and collected the blood that was trickling down the side of Shigaraki's face. And before the other villain could shove him away, Midoriya had enough blood for his purposes. Plus, he figured he would need more than just this amount to completely fool the others. Midoriya used Mr. Compress quirk to capture the light blue-haired villain just in case he needed more blood and to ensure he couldn't interfere. What was Shigaraki's plan again? Yes. Taking care of all the nuisances before heading to the actual part. He should be thankful Midoriya was keeping up with the plan. Just on the completely opposite side. But hey, marbles don't get an opinion, do they? And what was Shigaraki right now other than a marble? Nothing. Of course, the green-haired boy knew All for One was hiding the drawbacks of the quirk he had given him. Midoriya wasn't foolish enough to believe some quirk came without any drawbacks. All quirks had at least one. He had studied them his entire life. He just didn't know what the drawback was. Now that he had an idea, he had a counter prepared. Just use Ares' quirk occasionally, and he was good to go. Not like he wasn't already used to his limbs feeling like they were on fire, he could handle this easily. Recovery Girl was probably going to be upset with him later, but it was worth it. Midoriya then used Toga's quirk as planned and transformed into Shigaraki. Now, bringing the cyan orb that held the real villain captive close to his eye, Midoriya smiled. Let's get going now, HM? Can't keep Master waiting for too long, now can we, Shigaraki? Shoving the cyan orb into his pocket, Midoriya now as Shigaraki made his way downhill to meet up with All for One. It was fun. Now back at the base, the boy who was seemingly Shigaraki smiled. Until his smile turned into a chuckle and then laughter. He ran his hand through his hair before looking at the villain again, the pale skin beginning to melt away. Ah, way to blow my cover. What if I wanted to fool around a little more? That's not fair, is it? There stood Izuku Midoriya, smiling. The mastermind was completely unfazed by All for One figuring out his identity. I should have pointed it out earlier, but I had some doubts, which you just cleared with our earlier conversation, All for One stated. Oh, did I? Midoriya asked playfully. Tamura was never that observant, nor did he ever know about my first fight with All Might. But you did. Props for the acting. You fooled the whole league. Must have been hard. All for One said. Not at all. Though I'd say, Midoriya said, the hardest part was calling you master. I'm over here planning to destroy you, and at the same time, I have to act like I admire you the most. Ridiculous. I doubt you have to do that anymore, All for One said. But if there's one thing I see from all your planning, It's that you would have been a great asset to us. I might as well have considered making you my successor if you were to join us. Well, you don't always get what you want. Plus, I made my mind to destroy everything of yours the moment you involved Eri. That was uncalled for. Midoriya replied, keeping his posture and maintaining a serious face. It was true, throwing a little girl into this situation. Midoriya had to give everything he had not to go and hug her, tell her everything was fine, and send her back to UA immediately. But he still managed to get Eri to safety. She wasn't in the base. Too bad, because now you're going to face the consequences of your actions, right here. And later, she will too, All for One said, quickly placing his hand on the nearest wall. Using the quirk he took from Chisaki, All for One struck at Midoriya. Midoriya laughed. Too bad, today's just not your lucky day, All for One. He turned to Mud. It was a clone of a clone. It's like with Mike. Meanwhile, at the current battlefield, it had been almost an hour since the heroes began their assault on the villains. As expected, the heroes targeted everything they believed posed a threat, which was essentially everything, given that it was a Nomo facility. They were relentless, not caring about the consequences. Some heroes engaged the villains directly, while others focused on destroying the unfinished Nomus contained in massive tubes. So far, they hadn't encountered a single completed Nomu capable of fighting back or assisting the villains. Perhaps they were hidden underground or secured elsewhere in the vicinity. They needed to locate and neutralize them as quickly as possible. This mission was relatively straightforward since the Nomus were incomplete and the villains were significantly outnumbered. The heroes were performing well, while the villains began to panic, realizing that backup had yet to arrive and they could no longer communicate with the outside world due to Shinszo taking control of the panel and blocking all their communication channels. Meanwhile, the students were divided into groups, each fighting under the guidance of different pro-heroes. Cementos' group was seen moving outside, initially intending to locate the finished Nomus. However, the building felt like a maze, with no information about its layout in the books, and Shinszo had yet to fully access the building's architecture. Although there was a map displayed, Shinszo suspected it wasn't comprehensive. To make matters worse, the computer he was using was riddled with security locks. While he had some experience with these systems thanks to Midoriya's training under Hatsum, he wasn't a professional hacker. He could use some help if they wanted to complete their mission quickly. What's this? A back exit? Kaminari said, glancing around, only to realize they were no closer to finding the Nomus. Let's head back in. There was another hallway we didn't check. Cementos exclaimed, prompting the students to respond in unison, "Yes, sir," as they followed him back. "Kirishima, are you okay?" Uraraka asked, noticing the redhead standing still, lost in thought. "What? Yeah, I'm good. It's just..." Kirishima turned to her, "This whole situation. I think I've had a dream like this before. I was wondering if it would turn out the same way." Did something bad happen?" Uraraka asked. Kirishima nodded in response. He recalled how everything had gone wrong in his dream, leading to their demise. And Midoriya had been there. For some reason, he felt fear toward him in that dream. Was it a sign that the green-haired boy was destined to die? If so, did that mean they were all in danger? Uraraka gave him a thumbs up. "Well then, let's make sure that doesn't happen." Kirishima smiled as they both rejoined the others, hoping for a different outcome. This should do it. Shinszo muttered to himself as he pressed the enter key, hoping this attempt would succeed. Even Hatsum didn't use this many locks and passwords. He groaned in frustration when the words, "Access denied," flashed on the screen for the 6th time. He nearly slammed his head against the keyboard. This was becoming a headache. He needed help, someone who knew what they were doing. "Having trouble?" a voice asked. "Yeah." "What?" Shinszo turned abruptly to see Midoriya standing behind him, smiling apologetically. "How? When? I mean, you died." "Wait, you were playing dead?" Shinszo exclaimed. Yeah. Or are you a ghost?" "I swear, if you're a ghost, I'm going to revive you and take you down myself, you reckless fool." Really?" came a small, confused voice from behind Midoriya. Eri was there too. Midoriya gasped, glaring at Shinszo. Now look what you did, Shinszo. It's not my fault. Forget it. Tell me what's going on. Shinszo said as he sat back down. Midoriya smiled and snapped his fingers. Oh yes. Flashback time. Flashback. 3 days before the kidnapping occurred. Hatsum, I need your help. Midoriya said as he entered the support lab, closing the door behind him. It was afternoon, and with school over he was confident no one would overhear their conversation, but he double-checked to ensure they were alone. Oh, don't worry. I prepared for this, Hatsum said, rushing to the other side of the room to gather supplies. First off, you need hydrogen peroxide for the blood stains. I have some here, so that's covered. We can use potassium hydroxide for the rest. It's effective and reduces everything to bones. I also have a great hiding place for any remains, if necessary. Trust me, I've got everything we need. Hold up. I didn't kill anyone. Oh. So, you haven't turned to evil yet? No. You actually thought I would. Never mind. What do you want? Okay, so it might sound crazy, but it will definitely work as long as you help me. And please don't tell anyone. My lips are sealed. Just go on with the plan. Midoriya explained how All for One had been trying to manipulate him, attempting to draw him into the villain's ranks while hinting at his future plans. That's ridiculous. Why would he tell you what he's going to do? Was he that confident you'd join them? Hatsum asked. Villain habits, Midoriya replied, continuing his explanation. In the end, Midoriya managed to gather crucial internal information about the commission, thanks to Hatsum and her hacking tools. He discovered the location of the Noma facility and identified those betraying the commission. He had all the information he needed. 3 days later, just before the kidnapping, Midoriya visited Hatsum again for precautionary measures and to ensure everything was in order before the operation began. It was fine. Everything was going to be fine. He had been preparing for this moment for an entire month. There was no way he was going down. Izuku Midoriya was determined to defeat All for One. Back at the control panel, Midoriya explained, they kidnapped me, and I said I would join them to gain their trust. All for One gave me a quirk similar to Monoma's, but with a painful drawback that I managed to handle. I kind of pretended to be Shigaraki the whole time, and All for One completely bought it. I made a clone of myself disguised as Shigaraki and sent him with All for One to wherever he wanted me to go. I rescued Eri and here I am. Wait, why is Eri here? Shinszo asked, trying to process all the information. Midoriya and Eri exchanged a glance. Time for a flashback from my part. Eri exclaimed. Flashback? Back when Shigaraki Midoriya in disguise pulled Eri out of the room for their meeting with All for One. Let me go. Eri protested as they walked away from the room. Once they were at a safe distance, he knelt down to her level, letting his disguise slip slightly to reveal his face. He pulled out a vial and a small black device from his pocket. Eri gasped, Deku? It's me. Relax, Midoriya reassured her, gently petting her head. Listen, I need you to stay calm. We're in a villain's base, and I'm here on a mission. I don't know what they want from you, but I promise I'm right here, and I won't let anything bad happen. Okay. Eri nodded, her eyes fixed on her hero. I can't predict what they'll do, but if I'm there, I'll do my best to protect you. If I'm not. Midoriya handed Eri the small black device. Use this. Eri looked at the device in her hands and back at him. What is this? It's a quirk suppressing tool. There aren't many in Japan, but thankfully Hatsum knew where to find one. If you feel any danger and I'm not there, use your quirk. I know you can activate it. Press this button, and it will stop your quirk. He pointed to a blue button on the side. And the red one? Eri asked, pointing at the red button next to the blue one. I had Hatsum install a tracker in it. Press the red button, and I'll know where you are, okay? Midoriya said. Eri nodded again, clutching the device tightly. Be brave, Eri, Midoriya said, standing up and extending his hand to her. But I need you to act like this conversation never happened. Can you do that? Eri took his hand and smiled. Of course. Well then, Eri, he turned around, let's break the rules. And when he left me with those strange Noma creatures, I waited for the right moment to call Deku. I used my quirk at full power and rewound those nomas until they never existed. Then I used the device to turn off my quirk. Deku came in with the mist man, who was sleeping. We left him there anyway. I felt a bit feverish after that, but Deku helped me with his new quirk. Then he opened a portal, and we came here. Eri explained. Shinszo stared at her, realizing that if Midoriya and Eri were involved, anything could happen. While Shinszo processed what had just happened, Midoriya unlocked the complete layout of the building. The entire map appeared on the screen. I also asked Hatsum if I could take one of her hacking devices with me. I accessed all for One's computers to gather information. This one's a piece of cake, Midoriya said, showing Shinszo the hacking device. Wait, Hatsum knew about all this? Shinszo asked, breaking out of his trance. Yup, was Midoriya's only response. Shinszo was at a loss for words. Can you watch over Eri while I handle everything? Midoriya asked, pointing to the door that led outside, where the battle was taking place. Okay, but how do you plan to manage all that chaos? Shinszo asked. Oh, this is nothing. It's going to get worse, Midoriya replied. Shinszo glanced at the screen, realizing Mirko and some students were running toward the room next to the control panel. The finished nomas were in the room next door. It was going to get worse, much worse. And then All for One arrived in the mountains of Kyoto, a bit distant from the Nomo facility where everyone was gathered. For the first time in ages, the symbol of evil felt a chill run down his spine. It was raining blood. Yes, it was truly raining blood, which signified the success of Izuku Midoriya's grand plan. The young mastermind stood on a higher hill, looking as if he could barely keep his footing. He wore a gleeful smile, admiring his handiwork. All for One began to wonder what this boy would unleash upon the world when he became a true pro-hero. Midoriya spotted him from his vantage point and grinned even wider. All for One, the green-haired boy called out. Look. I did it, didn't I? It's raining blood. I played the villain too. I protected and aided my allies. I'm winning against my enemies. Shigaraki isn't coming out to help. The rest of the league is probably getting arrested. I did everything I said I would. What did you do? Midoriya questioned. Where is your grand plan? Do I not get to see what the symbol of evil is capable of? Or are you getting too old to think clearly in battle? Either way, you lose. My victory is as clear as day. All for One stood there, speechless. How did this even happen? Earlier, when Mirko's group rushed blindly into the completed Nomus compartment, Shinszo saw them on the display screen and immediately tried to activate his communicator. I'll alert them this instant. Don't. Midoriya interrupted, placing a hand on the purple-haired boy's shoulder. Cut off all communication. What's? Shinszo turned to him, flabbergasted. Midoriya was present, his plan was working perfectly, and they were set to finish the Nomus together. Why was he telling him to let them rush into danger, especially without any contact? Let them. Midoriya said with a small smile and half-closed eyes. He was enjoying this. Are you crazy? Listen here, you guys call me the mastermind, right? Midoriya said, showing both of his hands to Shinszo empty. The mastermind demands you to do as he says and leave the rest of the situation to him. He then moved his right hand behind Shinso's ear and pulled it back, curling it into a fist. He opened his fist to reveal a cyan blue orb between his fingers, like an old magic trick. Just look after Eri for a while, Midoriya said, clutching the circular object. And let this mastermind move the pieces. He opened his right hand to show the orb had vanished, now appearing in his other hand. After all for one thinks I have just taken their bishop. He closed his left hand and opened it to reveal 3 cyan blue orbs. But I already have their rook and queen as well. In a game like chess, it's a simple way of winning. Use delusions and divert your enemy's attention from the hidden threat. Then lead them to their ultimate demise. Playing dirty is the most logical way to win, you know. After that small speech, he chuckled lightly and departed. A few moments later, Shinszo snapped back to reality and immediately cut off all communications as instructed. He understood now. Midoriya was right. Just as he said, using delusions in this game would spread fear and panic among the heroes. When the villains saw their state of trouble, they'd think they were winning. Just when their hopes peaked, Midoriya would swoop in and shatter them. A dirty play, but the most logical one. Amazing. Shinszo also realized that Midoriya had taken Shigaraki as the bishop. But what had he taken as the rook and the queen? Hands locked behind his back, softly humming and slightly smiling, Midoriya leisurely strolled to the room across the hallway. He could hear shouts and yells from within. Midoriya glanced at the cyan blue orbs in his hand before putting them in his pocket and entering the storage compartment. It was chaos. Around 10 students from both Class 1A and Class 1B were present. Mirko was trying to manage the majority of the trouble, while some students fought, and others attempted to contact the heroes stationed around the plant, only to realize they couldn't because Shinszo had cut off all communication. Naturally, they thought the villains were gaining the upper hand. In the midst of the chaos, Minoma spotted Midoriya standing in the doorway. The green-haired boy wore a complacent expression that sent a chill down the blonde's spine. Midoriya noticed him too and gave him a wide, innocent smile. Minoma froze. Midoriya inhaled, took a step back, and used Best Genus quirk to grasp about 5 students at once: Kamakiri, Ashido, Shiozaki, Ida, and Tsunatori. He pulled the strings back with one hand, drawing the students toward him while simultaneously using Hananuki's quirk to soften the wall next to him for a comfortable landing. As the students recovered from the sudden action, Midoriya repeated the procedure, retrieving the other 5 students: Minoma, Jiru, Kurwaro, Sato, and Tokoyami. He made them land on the other wall, having softened it as well. Just as he retracted those fiber strings, Midoriya received a smack on the head from Ida. "Oh, what was that for?" Midoriya whined, rubbing his head. "For acting recklessly, making us all worry about you, playing dead, coming out of nowhere, and still acting recklessly," Ida exclaimed. Before Midoriya could respond or apologize, Ida grabbed both of his shoulders and shook him, saying, "Do you have any idea how devastated everyone was when Todoroki said you died? Hey, and you still need to explain why you can use multiple quirks like me," Minoma added from the side, trying to maintain his composure and not reveal that he had frozen in shock, thinking he had seen a ghost when his eyes landed on Midoriya. The other students expressed their thoughts on how Midoriya should explain things better next time and not play tricks on them. Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. The green-haired boy motioned for them to calm down and assured them he would explain everything once the commotion settled. Thankfully, they complied. Just then, Mirko rushed in, navigating through the chaos of the room, and skidded to a halt to check on the students. "What happened here?" Mirko asked, her gaze landing on a new face: Midoriya. "Oh, who's that?" "Hi, I'm the mastermind," Midoriya replied casually, still rubbing his head where Ida had bumped him. "Ah, nice to meet you," Mirko smiled. "Thanks. The feeling's mutual," Midoriya said. "They're so cool about it," the other 10 students collectively thought, sweat beading on their brows. "So, if you are the mastermind, then what are we supposed to do next?" Jiru asked. Don't worry. You guys have done enough," Midoriya said, giving her a sidelong glance and smiling. "Now sit back and watch how a real villain leader works his game." With that, everyone was teleported away from the compartment, landing near Endeavor's group. Once the area was clear of any potential injuries, Midoriya turned his attention to the Nomus. Those mindless creatures were doing nothing that could lead to a favorable outcome. There were about 45 to 50 of them. Midoriya coughed, feeling blood trickle from his mouth. He bit down on his lip, trying to ignore the intense pain coursing through his body, likely a side effect of using so many quirks at once without activating rewind for a while. He activated Ares' quirk, a beige horn appearing on his forehead. Standing there, with drowsy eyes and a wicked grin, the green-haired boy raised his arms. "It's time all for one. It's time for you to lose." He brought his hands down with a sudden motion, and a mix of purple and gold merged with bright green. Pain surged through him, but he pressed on. In that moment, Midoriya combined One for All, Rewind, and Warp Gate. His hands created several warp gates that sent the Nomus to a location he had prepared earlier, surprising Shinszo at the control panel. He used rewind to mend his body, willing himself to ignore the pain. He didn't want any injuries that could slow him down now. Finally, he tapped into his own power to support his body and give himself a boost. The pain throughout his body was more intense than ever. But they say no pain, no gain for a reason, right? Midoriya was grateful that he was practically numb to the feeling of pain. Once the nomas were out, Midoriya took a deep breath. The grin on his face widened, perhaps fueled by a sudden rush of energy. Golden and bright green sparks still flickered from his body. He steadied his breathing before teleporting himself out as well. Midoriya opened his eyes under the sky, the sun slowly descending, but the day was not over yet. He stood on higher ground than where he had teleported the nomas. Where had he sent the nomas? Right above his trap. A few hundred meters away from the plant, Midoriya had created tall, sharp spikes from stones using Chisaki's quirk earlier. These spikes were sharp enough to pierce through the nomas and hold them midair. And that's exactly what happened. With a slight chuckle, Midoriya wiped the blood from the corner of his lips. He placed both hands on the ground, using overhaul to manage the nomas while strengthening it with one for all. The sharp stone spikes and the nomas erupted from within, creating a chaotic scene. Since the spikes held those mindless beings high above ground level, where Midoriya stood, the aftermath was a cascade of crimson. This spectacle was enough time for All for One to arrive on the scene, and Midoriya was glad he didn't miss the incredible view. But that feeling of accomplishment returned. The thrill of being unreadable. The sensation of victory. And now here they were. All for One standing there, Midoriya smiling with a weary posture, and blood raining down until it ceased. The ground beneath All for One was now completely red. The rain stopped. So far, the mastermind and his grand plan had achieved nothing but success. But now, without another word, it was time. Time for a final battle. Midoriya was exhausted, barely able to stand and keep his eyes open, while All for One appeared to be in good condition. Of course, there was no avoiding the physical confrontation any longer. They had to fight, and that would determine the ultimate winner. But that was just what All for One thought. Because Midoriya still had the queen and the rook. The green-haired boy retrieved 2 cyan blue orbs. All for One prepared for an attack, combining his quirks. Midoriya tossed the 2 orbs into the air above him. All for One unleashed a blast of infrared rays combined with a powerful air cannon, ready to strike from a distance. The 2 orbs fell back into Midoriya's right hand, and then he launched 7 more from his left hand, using Kurogiri's quirk to warp them around the area where All for One stood, forming a circular pattern. As the quirk's effect wore off, it revealed that Midoriya had stored gas bombs. The bombs detonated, enveloping that part of the mountain in a thick cloud of strange white smoke. No one could see what was happening until the smoke dissipated completely. As for All for One, who had already used a quirk to enhance his vision based on heat signatures, the gas bombs contained a chemical that distorted the heat signatures of various beings, including insects, microorganisms, and plants. Right now, All for One was detecting heat signatures similar to Midoriya's all around him. He didn't know where the boy was. But since when did he care about minimizing environmental destruction? All for One unleashed his attack blindly, and by chance, it struck Midoriya's left leg. After releasing the gas bombs, the boy immediately began running downhill, desperate to close the distance between himself and All for One. In all honesty, he knew he couldn't keep this up for much longer, 10 minutes at most. He felt as if he might collapse. His vision was blurring from the fatigue and pain of using all those quirks. Now, his sight was nearly gone, but he had to push through. He didn't want anyone to interfere with his final move. He thought he could use Hatsume's quirk to discern the details in the shadows of the white smoke. He already had goggles to protect his eyes, but right now, all he wanted was to close them. But he couldn't. Fortune seemed to be shifting in his favor. His left leg was injured, just as he had done to himself before. The new twist was that it was also burned. His ankle was bent at an unnatural angle, clearly indicating a break. Midoriya stumbled down to the lower ground upon impact, coughing as he braced himself with his hands before standing up, ignoring the pain coursing through his body. Before All for One could attack again, Midoriya pulled out the orb he had dubbed the Rook, removing the effects of Mr. Compress Quirk. Inside were 2 guns loaded with quirk-erasing bullets. This boy wasn't going to kill All for One, he was going to make him experience life without a quirk. Amazing, right? A man who had relied on quirks for so long would now face the reality of being completely powerless. The Rook represented 2 silent guns, while the Queen held over 20 quirk-erasing bullets. Using Hatsum's quirk to perfect his aim, he shot All for One in the right shoulder and then the left. Thankfully, this gun was silent, a different model that cancelled out noise. From his research over the past month, including his time impersonating Shigaraki, Midoriya learned that All for One possessed around 20 quirks. No more than that. That's when he activated the quirk he had duplicated, Multiplier. Disguised as Shigaraki, he had easy access to the quirk-erasing bullets and managed to create about 24 of them. He just needed to reload both guns once. If he executed this correctly, All for One would be apprehended and remain quirkless forever. The symbol of evil would face its end, or Midoriya would meet his demise for real. But for now, All for One was down 2 quirks. Unfortunately, Midoriya had no idea which ones they were. Getting close was risky. All for One could still possess close-range combat quirks. It was a gamble. But Midoriya decided against using the duplicate quirk again. He didn't want his own body to fail him before he secured victory. He was determined to win this fight while using as few quirks as possible, while All for One had to rely on everything he had. Midoriya had learned to fight without a quirk, while All for One was entirely dependent on them. It didn't take a genius to see who had the advantage. All for One sensed something was amiss when he found himself unable to use rivet and warping. He realized what the boy had planned, and it was far from pleasing. It filled him with a sense of dread. Midoriya had succeeded at every turn so far. If he won again, it would mean the downfall of the symbol of evil. All for One scoffed and unleashed infrared rays, shooting continuously in a spiral to cover all directions. With his other hand, he launched an air cannon, intent on eliminating the boy right then and there. But Midoriya ducked under the rays and narrowly avoided the blast of air. He charged forward and fired again with both guns. That accounted for 4 more quirks lost. All for One cursed under his breath and took to the air using airwalk, aiming to reach a height where the gas was absent and he could locate Midoriya accurately. He ascended quickly. Midoriya, on the other hand, activated rewind for a brief moment to fix his leg. He leaped toward where All for One had just been standing and landed behind him, closing one eye while using the other to aim at the villain rising into the sky with Hatsum's quirk. He fired twice with both guns, resulting in All for One losing 4 more quirks. That made a total of 8 quirks gone. Midoriya rolled and struggled to stand again, propping himself up with his arms. He fell back to the ground a few times before managing to sit up. After days of enduring constant pain throughout his body, he was nearing his limit. A cold sensation crept into his throat, his head felt light, his eyes drooped, and blood trickled from his mouth, urging him to stop and rest. Yet he stood up, defying his body's protests, and removed the goggles. His vision remained blurry despite the smoke dissipating. He wondered where All for One had gone. Did he still have airwalk, or had he fallen? Midoriya closed his eyes briefly before opening them again, breathing heavily. He looked up to see if the villain was still in the sky. He couldn't take any chances now. Just as the green-haired boy looked up, All for One was right behind him, preparing a concentrated beam of energy to attack while the boy was distracted. All for One unleashed the beam, striking the boy's chest. He wrapped his arms around himself and fell to the ground, silent but trembling violently. Seizing the opportunity, All for One readied another attack with the same quirk. He shot again, but Midoriya turned around swiftly. Pushing past my limits. That's what I was taught, right? Enduring a bit more pain. I can handle it. Midoriya smiled through the struggle. All for One hit Midoriya's shoulder, and the boy managed to erase 4 more of his quirks. 12 quirks gone. But Midoriya needed to reload. He grunted, trying to rise. Aren't you going to use your quirk to heal yourself? All for One asked, his anger masked by a calm tone. And risk my own life before you finish me off? No thanks. I can hold out longer on my own, Midoriya replied weakly, chuckling as he fought to regain his footing. Just as he stood again, All for One unleashed an air cannon, sending Midoriya crashing against a slope, creating a crater and knocking away his weapons. Before he could recover, All for One fired another beam, this time hitting Midoriya in the abdomen. He bit his lip, eyes shut, trying to ignore the fatigue and pain as he leaned against the slope, taking deep breaths and drawing his legs close. Looks like the mastermind is about to meet his end, All for One said flatly. Midoriya attempted to laugh, but it turned into a cough, blood escaping his lips. He didn't respond, only managing a pained smile. After everything he had fought for, after taking control of the situation, after reaching the final phase. Midoriya's eyes slowly closed, the smile lingering as his head hung low. His hand fell from his chest, revealing the injury. All for One stood there, observing him. Nothing happened. The heroes were finishing their task, having captured all the villains. The unfinished nomes were destroyed, and the completed ones remained unspoken of. None of them noticed anything amiss away from the plant. The heroes gathered outside, away from where All for One was. Shinszo was still at the control panel with Eri, waiting for Midoriya to return. He felt it was best to wait for the green-haired boy before joining the others, unsure how to explain the presence of a 6-year-old child who had gone missing from UA in a normal plant. Outside, Kirishima suddenly felt a gut-wrenching sensation. They were winning. The heroes had captured the villains and completed their mission. So why did it feel like something was wrong? Dude, are you okay? Siro asked, placing a hand on Kirishima's shoulder. Yeah. I'm fine, the redhead replied, turning to face him. But something isn't. They exchanged worried glances. Nobody spoke. Now that Kirishima had mentioned it, something definitely felt off, but they couldn't pinpoint what it was. All for One stepped closer to the boy, and all movement seemed to cease. It was completely silent. After several minutes, All for One checked the boy's breathing. Concluding that he wasn't breathing and his body was cold, he stepped back. The boy lay motionless before him, the real Izuku Midoriya, not a clone. So, was it safe to assume the boy was truly gone this time? All for One turned away, moving forward. Absolutely not. He pivoted to attack again, ensuring his aim was true this time. He shot the beam, and the impact sent black and gray smoke rising from the spot. Once the smoke cleared, there was still no movement or sound. But Midoriya was nowhere to be seen. The boy appeared in midair behind All for One through a warp gate, slashing at his face with a knife as he rolled to the ground. All for One wiped the blood from the cut on his cheek. I usually despise anyone who interferes with my work. But those who refuse to stay down, no matter how much you break them, are the ones I loathe the most. Well, that makes two of us, Midoriya smirked. His injuries were still present, he was still bleeding, and the pain lingered. But his body felt numb now, and he didn't care. You are such a nuisance, All for One said, preparing to attack once more. But Midoriya used Stain's quirk, liking a bit of blood off the knife. All for One fell to his knees, paralyzed in that instant. Unable to move, attack, or defend himself, he was completely vulnerable. You can't hold me like this for long, he warned. Midoriya picked up his guns. Of course I can. You, my dear symbol of evil, are a type B, which means you won't be able to do much for the next 10 minutes or so. The green-haired boy tilted his head, smirking. And that's plenty of time for me to deal with you. And your quirks. Once he was satisfied that the man was now quirkless, Midoriya dropped his weapons. Then he used Midnight's quirk on All for One, sending him into a deep slumber. Good night, All for One. I hope to never see you again. With that, Midoriya fell unconscious. In the end, he won. He stirred. Eyes closed, his head felt heavy. His tongue felt dry, and a slight headache lingered. He could tell there was an 4 connected to the back of his right hand. His muscles were stiff, and the faint scent of medicine surrounded him. Even so, everything felt. Midoriya slowly opened his eyes, realizing he was in a white room, dressed in a hospital gown. The previous events replayed in his mind. He had been in Kyoto, leaving Eri with Shinszo. He had faced the nomus and defeated All for One. That thought brought a smile to his face. The man who had lived through generations by stealing quirks was now quirkless. The irony was not lost on him. The heroes must have found him and brought him to the hospital. They probably informed UA about the mastermind as well. But there were still many explanations to provide. He was likely facing another house arrest after this. He and Hatsum had even made a bet on whether he would be grounded after the whole mastermind incident. It seemed Hatsum was winning. The green-haired boy attempted to sit up, wincing as he moved. It felt like his insides were protesting, but he managed to push through. After rubbing his eyes, Midoriya looked around the room, noticing he was alone. How long have I been out anyway? He wondered. Just as he was about to get up from the hospital bed to investigate, the door swung open. And look at this, Aizawa sighed as he entered the room. Just woke up and already ready to get up and go, huh? But then again, what else should I expect from UA's #1 problem child? Midoriya silently shifted back on the bed, fiddling with his fingers and avoiding Aizawa's gaze. He was definitely facing house arrest. Come on, Aizawa. Not the time. Leave him alone. All Might entered, following the underground hero. He immediately moved to Midoriya's side, placing a hand on his messy hair. How are you feeling, my boy? He asked with concern. You're better, I guess? Midoriya replied with a nervous smile. He had no plan for how to explain everything to All Might and the others, especially since he hadn't given them any hints about his actions. Are you sure? You lost consciousness due to blood loss, and there were several severe internal injuries. Recovery Girl came to heal you yesterday, so there shouldn't be any serious problems, All Might said. Aizawa added, and she looked pretty upset if you ask me. That's not good, Midoriya chuckled. How long was I out for? 4 days. The team of heroes that went to Kyoto found you a little away from the Noma plant with All for One. You were both unconscious when they arrived, Aizawa replied, folding his arms over his chest. What happened to All for One? Midoriya asked, eager to know about the aftermath regarding the villain. All Might replied, we highly doubt he will be a problem again. He was captured along with the League. Surprisingly, All for One was reported to be quirkless. Which brings us to our next topic, Aizawa chimed in. Mirko's group reported that you were the mastermind who has been manipulating us this whole time. I suspect you are the reason for All for One's quirklessness. In fact, I know you are. Moreover, Minoma from Class B reported that you have multiple quirks now. You better start explaining yourself, kid. Midoriya looked down, struggling to find the right words. Why did he feel so nervous around his teachers? He could easily confront villains, but this was different. All Might sighed, listen, young man. While I don't appreciate a first-year student taking on the symbol of evil. I don't care if he's a mastermind or whatever. Recklessness is recklessness, Aizawa interrupted. All Might gave him a puzzled look before continuing. While I appreciate what you've done for the world by taking All for One out of the picture, as your mentor, I have every right to know what happened and why we weren't informed. And please explain the multiple quirks, it's been bothering me. It's seriously one painful quirk, and I really want to get rid of it, Midoriya replied flatly. After that, the green-haired boy took a deep breath and tried his best to summarize what had happened. He explained how All for One had targeted his mind for a month while he used that time to gather information. He encrypted the books after making a solid plan and counters to defeat the villains. He let the kidnapping go smoothly to gain their trust, faked his death to make the villains think they had the upper hand, and disguised himself as Shigaraki to play All for One. He managed to get his hands on those bullets and ultimately defeated All for One himself. Speaking of Shigaraki, Aizawa informed him that the villain had also been captured. When they found Midoriya unconscious in the hills, they discovered the blue orb that had contained Shigaraki. The light blue-haired villain was taken along with the rest of the League after the effects of compress quirk wore off. So, all that happened and no one was fully informed? You just told everyone bits and pieces of your plan to avoid raising any suspicions? All Might asked. Well, I did discuss everything with Hatsum. I also sent my mom a book to let her know what I was doing, so she wouldn't be worried, Midoriya replied, still fiddling with his fingers. After that, the green-haired boy was left with a doctor to check his medical condition. Meanwhile, Aizawa headed back to UA High to update everyone on the situation. All Might stayed with Midoriya until he was discharged later that. The green-haired boy also contacted his mother to let her know he was fine. A little after the sun had set, Midoriya was discharged, and All Might drove him back to UA. Todoroki tried his best to maintain a stoic expression when Midoriya entered the dorms. He really did try. After all, he was the one who had told everyone that Midoriya had died. Now, seeing the green-haired boy who he thought was lost casually walk in smiling as if nothing had happened made it quite difficult for him to keep his composure. However, since their homeroom teacher had already informed the entire class about everything, they simply asked Midoriya if he needed anything or if he was okay. Naturally, Midoriya assured them that he was completely fine and that they didn't need to worry about him. After that, they had dinner, and everyone went to bed. Upon arriving in his room, Midoriya realized something. He closed the door and sighed before picking up his phone and calling a certain pink-haired girl. "Hello." Hatsum answered on the other end of the call. Midoriya smirked. "Guess who didn't get house arrest? Great, now I have to pay up." So, the prologue was a misdirection. Most people forgot about it, so it worked out. My only regret is that I couldn't include another twist I had prepared all the way back from book 1. It just didn't seem to fit into the story.